Chapter 98. Rex. Skynet once again displayed its dangerous nature as a killing machine. The second-generation Skynet that Chun-Ong had upgraded had nanomachines that had reached the level of microcells. Dozens of simple mechanical structures, under the effect of the unified magnetic field, formed mechanical tissues the size of cells. The composition of these mechanical structures was simple, and their functions were simple to three. They were movement, disassembly, and assembly. Its actions were all based on the unified magnetic field core, and its energy came from this. Because of its simplicity, its size had reached the extent that it was invisible to the naked eye. When the nanomachines formed a certain tissue, the functions that could be realized began to become extremely complex. Because of this, the second generation of nanomachines, in addition to reassembly and self-replication, also had an extremely terrifying ability: nano-level disassembly. Smaller and more secretive nanomachines flooded into the base like a tide. They quickly spread into tiny particles, and even microscopic structures that were invisible to the naked eye. With metal as the core of the mechanical structure, they formed the simplest composite structure with any materials that could be used around them. Like an ant tide, they drowned all materials that they encountered. Plastic, ceramics, rubber, all materials were disassembled at the nano-level. Often, there were researchers in the base who were submerged in the black tide. Then, they rolled out of the nanomachines naked without a trace of hair. Even if the metal content had reached the minimum, the nanomachines in the base were like a virus, swallowing all materials. Scott had not expected this at all. His laser beam was scattered in midair by the nanomachines with water molecules. The combination of metal and other materials made their abilities more complex and varied. Under the supply of electric current energy, more composite components of different structures were controlled by the metal structure and formed part of it. Wolverine took a few steps back in embarrassment. The other things on his body had been torn apart. It had already been dismantled into tatters, and a soldier beside it accidentally touched a bit of the mechanical unit. Countless nanomachines spread out and disappeared under his skin. His face showed a desperate expression. His companions next to him abandoned him without hesitation. The mechanical structure was quickly reconstructed in his body. His joints were controlled by the robots, and his muscles were paralyzed by the electric current. The energy brought by the magnetic field controlled him through the robots in his body. A small stream of mechanical energy flowed into his mouth and nose. Very soon, some special mechanical structures were reassembled in his body. Through the bioelectric information flow, his nerves were controlled. The soldier felt his spine go numb, and his body began to move uncontrollably. He nimbly leaped onto the ceiling. The magnetic field seeped out from his palms and feet and absorbed the ceiling. The modification of the nanomachines allowed the soldier to unleash the limits of the human body. He was extremely strong, agile, and proficient in combat skills and marksmanship. His machine-like accurate judgment allowed his body to instinctively learn the skills in the Skynet program. He ran along the ceiling. Controlled humans like him attacked their former companions from all directions. Then, there was a controlled human. He stood up. Like a plague, the people in the base were controlled bit by bit. The remaining people gathered in the core security room of the base, guarding this last line of defense. Hundreds of original guards, wearing mechanically reconstructed exoskeleton armors, lined up neatly outside the core of the base. Electromagnetic cannons formed by nanomachines, guns, infrasound weapons, and even basic electric current-carrying robots surrounded the core security room. The atmosphere of despair pervaded the hearts of all the guards. The professor sat in his wheelchair and looked at the silent crowd outside. The expressionless soldiers looked at him indifferently. Even though he understood that their senses were useless and they were relying on Skynet to control their actions, the professor couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. "Logan, what happened to them?" Wolverine glanced outside and replied indifferently, They are being controlled. The nanomachines are in their bodies, simulating their nerve currents and manipulating their bodies. At that time, we called these people the bewitched. As long as we use an electromagnetic shield to shoot into their bodies, they will return to normal. They won't die. Knowing that their companions were only being controlled, the atmosphere here relaxed slightly. At the same time, they were even more reluctant to raise their weapons. If they opened fire again, they would not be killing the enemy, but their own people. Wolverine looked at the fully armed infatuated ones outside and suddenly said with a hidden meaning, "The bewitched are not scary because they are easy to distinguish. However, Skynet has put more computing power into the bewitched. They can even read the memories of the bewitched and control the bewitched to disguise themselves as their original appearance and blend in with us. Many bases were breached by Skynet because of internal problems. Then what's the way to distinguish them?" Magneto walked in from outside and looked at Logan. Logan grinned. "A strong magnetic field will do." Magneto raised his hands and a strong magnetic field swept across everyone present. Everyone who was scanned felt that their blood was floating uncontrollably. Their bodies were close to suffocation. The iron ions in their blood flowed into their brains along with the blood flow, making them feel as if their vision was turning black. "That's enough, Eric." The professor stopped him. Magneto put down his hands with a cold smile. Most people couldn't help but collapse to the ground. A few researchers suddenly rolled their eyes and vomited violently. Small iron particles gushed out of their nostrils and mouth. They struggled a few times and fainted. "It seems that Skynet is nothing more than this," Magneto sneered. A diamond-like humanoid figure swayed out from behind Magneto. She chuckled and said, "Eric, you weren't so arrogant before. Let me guess why you are unhappy. Could it be that someone who doesn't know what's good for them rejected you? White Queen, do your own thing." Stryker came from the front and ordered. White Queen smiled at him indifferently and sat down beside the professor. Stryker's face was dignified as he glanced at everyone present. "Everyone, the speed of Skynet's improvement is beyond our imagination. We have no time to waste. The probing plan has completely failed. Before the general attack, we didn't get the information we wanted. Magneto, your ability restrains Skynet. This is the only condition for us to release you. Use your ability to defeat it." Stryker's pressure had reached a level that he couldn't bear. The shadow of apocalypse was suffocating him. He even gave up his pride in facing Magneto. In the core area of the base, the most important supercomputer was still here. Electronic Will lay beside the computer and nodded gently. The only bit of power in the core area was reconnected to the computer. With a flash of blue light, the computer was turned on, and Electronic Will connected to this machine with amazing computing speed. Countless extremely complex information was reconstructed in the computer. The professor connected to the spirit of Electronic Will. The little girl was Prophet, the watcher was Hawkeye, and the listener was Left Ear. Several mutants with auxiliary abilities were connected to the professor's psychic network. Countless information gathered from their brains into the computer. Finally, Magneto also connected to this network. He looked at the professor with a complicated expression. When he opened his eyes again, the world had become different. Countless magnetic field lines, as if real, were suspended around his body. Magneto gently flicked a magnetic field line. A robot in the distance was pulled over by a powerful magnetic force. Magneto manipulated the magnetic field line in his hand and tore it into 4 or 5 pieces with electric current and sparks. A robot's limbs were pulled by an invisible field and torn apart violently. It turned back into a fragmented nanoform. On the ground and in the sky, Magneto had never felt such dense and powerful electromagnetic force. The most subtle magnetic field could be detected by him, and the most powerful geomagnetism could also be affected by him. Everything between heaven and earth was replaced by countless public notices and numbers. Magneto, who used the supercomputer to expand his ability, was truly in the field of electromagnetism. He could make the magnetic field repeat with a wave of his hand. He gently clenched his hand, and the small nanorobots around him were swept by the powerful magnetic field and pinched into a ball under Magneto's control. To be continued. Chapter 99. Rex, Skynet's counterattack began. It reassembled into an electromagnetic generator, using the current magnetic field to interfere with Magneto's magnetic field induction. Countless robots reassembled to form a huge gravitational generator. The powerful gravity tore the outer shell of the base apart. But all of this was to no avail. Skynet, which relied on core magnetic field reorganization and unified magnetic field calculation, faced the controller of magnetic force for the first time. The powerful and distorted magnetic field interfered with their combination and communication. The tiny nanomachines could not even be combined and were easily swept away by Magneto. Several electromagnetic generators could not resist Magneto's magnetic field ability. The electric current fluctuated violently, making a squeaking sound. The remaining nanomachines fused with the electrical generator, and a more delicate, more efficient structure was reassembled. The battle between Skynet and Magneto on the magnetic field had begun. Powerful magnetic field fluctuations formed between them. Twisted ball lightning, jumping electric sparks, the iron made by Magneto was twisted and stretched in the magnetic field, ravaged like dough. Powerful energy accumulated in the air between the two. A little electric current wrapped around Stormsword's hand. She stroked the jumping fire snake, and the energy in the magnetic field moved quickly with her stirring. Stormsword, who was also connected to the professor's mental network, jumped lightly between Magneto and Skynet, manipulating this powerful energy. The air that was flickering with electricity started to vibrate violently, and a powerful storm formed between them. Lightning and thunder, together with the whistling wind, twisted into a crazy thunderstorm, wreaking havoc in the open space. Hundreds of millions of volts flowed wildly, sweeping across the land, setting off a terrifying electric storm. Under Lady Stormsword's control, it gradually expanded. In the sky, dark clouds began to accumulate, and hurricanes and lightning spread from the earth to the sky, expanding to a range of tens of miles. The laser eyes, under the instructions of the old professor, used lasers to evaporate all visible water molecules and air, violently rubbing in the magnetic field, releasing powerful electric energy. Stormsword gently touched the ground under her feet, riding the wind, and was sucked into the hurricane. Suddenly, a series of double images appeared in Magneto's eyes. These things seemed to happen after tens of seconds. He did not hesitate to take a few steps back. Then, Thor descended on the earth, and the crazy silver swept across the land. Countless bolts of lightning densely spread, intertwined into chains and networks, destroying everything in it. Even Skynet could only resist for a moment in the crazy entanglement of lightning. He lost all motivation. Any structure of order was mercilessly destroyed by the electricity. The raging wind tore apart its remains and swept it up into the sky. The mad storm grew larger and larger. Magneto controlled the magnetic field to accelerate the movement and friction of the molecules, making the lightning even crazier. Coupled with the high temperature created by the laser eyes, the storm controlled by Lady Stormsword became even stronger. It spread into a huge hurricane several miles in size. He quickly moved toward Manhattan. Magneto, wearing the metal armor, flew into the storm, and the violent clouds made way for him, revealing the calm eye of the storm. Lightning flashed across the sky, and strong winds swept across the ground. The hurricane carried an unparalleled might as it swept towards the throne of steel in the center of Manhattan. The professor controlled the wheelchair and followed it worriedly. Chen-Ong stood on the high platform. The corner of Xiao Chen's clothes fluttered in the wind. In the distance, the huge cloud pillar that connected the heavens and the earth was approaching at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wind gradually grew stronger. Demoness looked at Chen Ang's calm face, and a rare hint of annoyance appeared in her heart. "This is Lady Storm's word. Thanks to you, the government gathered hundreds of meteorologists to build a model of the storm. With the help of Charles, she broke through the limits of her ability and set off a powerful thunderstorm beyond the range of human knowledge. This violent energy even surpassed nuclear weapons, becoming a more powerful deterrent for the government. Lady Storm's word is now a strategic weapon. They believe that she is a brand new weather weapon. They are developing equipment for her to control the global climate, making climate change a powerful weapon for the United States." Demoness looked at Chen Ang, trying to find a trace of negative emotions, but she was disappointed. Chen Ang was as calm as ever, and even looked a little happy. Happiness was the only emotion that Demoness could see. She immediately overturned this ridiculous assumption. It was just his disguise, at least that was what Demoness thought. They will not give up the ability to control this weapon, and the professor will not allow his student to become the promoter and weapon of war. This is his principle and belief. Besides, the government will not like a weapon with its own will. Chen Ang sighed. That's right. They haven't even created such a weapon. They are already trying to control her. Of course, this is a slow and undetectable action, but Charles is already feeling uneasy. This is the sorrow of not being able to control one's own fate. Power needs a corresponding position. This is the source of order. As if he didn't hear the provocation in her words, Chen Ang sincerely sighed. If Lady Storm's word can really control this ability, the professor's burden will be much lighter. Lady Storm's word can make the global climate more suitable for human survival. She has the means to prevent climate disasters and change the environment. At least in Africa and the Middle East, the status of mutants will be greatly improved and even normalized. Agricultural countries will maintain a gentle attitude towards X-Men, transforming deserts and wilderness, and adjusting the global climate balance. This is the contribution that mutants can make to the world, and the true path to peace. Chen Ang was like a true pacifist, truly happy for this. This made Demoness feel ridiculous and absurd. A madman who tried to destroy the world also had such a compassionate side? It would be a big joke if it was said out loud. But this is also a path full of thorns, a power that is beyond control, ambitious people who spy on this power all the time, living in politics and calculations all the time. Charles has really paid a lot over the years. Chen Ang sighed. Demoness had an indescribable feeling in her heart. Was it guilt or reluctance? Her eyes were a little sore, but she still restrained herself from showing this emotion. A peerless madman is actually worried about world peace in a time of crisis. I've never heard of such a thing. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? Demoness held on to the railing and stabilized her body. The strong wind had made it difficult for her to stand. I am me. No matter what I do, it's always others who take care of me. I don't need to consider other people's opinions. Besides, this really isn't a crisis. The huge storm had begun to touch Manhattan. In the sky above the huge bay in the northeast corner, the hurricane sucked out a large amount of seawater, setting off a huge wave more than 10 meters high. The tsunami hit Manhattan. Chen Ang stood in the wind, mixed with seawater, a few meters in front of him, was blocked by an invisible force. The electromagnetic generator under Chen Ang's body released a powerful energy. The air in front of Chen Ang twisted slightly, and extremely condensed gravitational lines extended from the ground to the sky. Within dozens of kilometers, the air trembled slightly, and the powerful electromagnetic energy extended from the gravitational lines, disappearing into the void. The huge gravitational tide between the Earth and the Moon began to distort. An invisible anomaly appeared 800,000 meters above Manhattan. The Earth's rotation was like a huge force, a space spring slowly winding up. A huge gravitational anomaly was brewing. Between Chen-Ong and the storm, a distorted space was sucking in seawater. "What are you doing?" Demonis saw a huge funnel forming in the air. The distorted water made her feel extreme danger. She could not help but ask Chen-Ong, "Any substance will be affected by gravity." "I'm just extracting something," Chen-Ong said with a smile. "What is it?" The demoness saw that the twisting funnel had already covered an area of tens of miles above Manhattan. In some places, rocks and concrete were easily destroyed by this twisting power. Everything within range. A hole opened in the sky. New Yorkers were surprised to see the shadows of stars in the sky. The side of the sky that faced the universe became dark and deep. The sun sprinkled down strong ultraviolet rays. The intense sunlight made everyone feel dazzled and hot. Lady Storm's word and her gigantic storm were swallowed by this opening. In the exosphere more than 800,000 meters above the ground, the gravitational deformity unleashed its distorting power. The gigantic rain clouds and storm in the air were swallowed by the gravitational deformity, and a massive amount of water molecules were sucked away. The distortion of space caused everything here to be pulled 800,000 meters above the ground. When the gravity returned to normal, the storm had already disappeared. Chen-Ong had only folded 2 parts of the atmosphere and changed the environment of the storm. The storm stirred the charged particles in the exosphere. Lady Storm's word and Magneto were carried to an altitude of 800,000 meters. The charged particles had been stimulated by the thunderstorm and had undergone intense changes. An unprecedented thunderstorm was brewing. The horrifying energy was manic and disorderly. As long as there was a primer, this unvented energy could tear Magneto and Lady Storm's word into pieces and vaporize them into particles. Lady Storm's word was sweating profusely as she tried her best to control the violent energy. Magneto was helping her to calm the magnetic field here. With the protection of the magnetic field and the storm, the two were not afraid of the environment here. However, when Chen-Ong appeared in front of them, their breathing almost stopped. They were like people standing on the roof of a warehouse, and Chen-Ong happened to be holding a torch. Chen-Ong only needed to slightly twist the gravitational anomaly, and they would be blasted into an ionic state by the violent energy here. Lady Storm's word saw Chen-Ong slowly reaching out his hand, and a look of despair appeared on her face. She heard Chen-Eng's exclamation in her ear. "Finally, we've met a rare mutant with a brain." The next moment the world turned upside down. Magneto and Lady Storm's word returned to the sky above Manhattan. In the exosphere, a violent explosion of energy made the people of New York feel the unrest in the sky. The U.S. military satellites near the ground were completely destroyed by this energy. To be continued. Chapter 100. Renks. A huge amount of air was sucked out, and a huge wind tunnel appeared in the sky above Manhattan. Strong winds swept in from all directions, causing a drastic change in the weather. The people of New York were surprised to see the strong winds formed by the rising air. Their eyes were full of confusion. Today's weather seemed to be a little too strange. 4 or 5 minutes passed, and the vacuum here was still not half filled. Storm's word used the change in the airflow to stabilize her body, but she did not dare to make a move. If the vacuum state just now appeared in a giant city, it would be enough to cause millions of people to suffocate to death. If combined with a violent storm, it would be enough to destroy a large city. Humans were always too weak in the face of astronomical weather. Chen-Ong used gravity to extract the storm created by Storm's word. Such power had reached the level of destroying the world. Magneto and Storm's word felt a suffocating pressure. Such horror was really indescribable. The only thing that supported the two of them to not admit defeat was carelessness. In the sky, it was a difficult problem to balance one's strength. Without a fulcrum, one would be easily affected by the force. Although the suction force was terrifying, it was not enough to shake the two Omega-level mutants. However, they were unable to borrow any strength in the air. They were caught in the storm and could not fight back. Fortunately, the target this time was only the throne of steel under the feet of Apocalypse. They slowly landed on the ground and faced the Apocalypse head-on. There was a great deal of pressure. The feeling of powerlessness just now made the two of them remember the horror of Apocalypse even more deeply. That feeling of being played by others was something that neither of them wanted to experience again. Magneto X-Men. Chun-Ong stood on the high platform with his hands behind his back, looking down at them. Demonis stood behind him with a complicated expression. Chun-Ong held out his hand and made a gesture of invitation. She made an inviting gesture. On the steel platform, there were countless mechanical weight groups, and a long ladder that spiraled around the tower appeared under her feet. Mystique turned around and looked at him. Ignoring the long ladder, she jumped down from the platform hundreds of meters high. A slender rope hung around her waist, and she swung forward with the strength of the rope. With a beautiful somersault, she landed behind Magneto. The professor greeted in a low voice, "Rue 1. Enchantress stood silently behind Magneto, not looking at him, and there was a silent sadness between the two, causing the atmosphere to fall into silence. Magneto suddenly stretched out his hands and squeezed gently, and the wheelchair under the professor was deformed and twisted, binding him. This change stunned everyone, and Magneto had already put on a helmet that prevented mental prying. Seeing that Lady Tempest and Wolverine were about to charge at him, he lifted the professor and forced them to retreat. The professor sighed. "Eric, you again?" Sigh. Magneto looked at him without saying anything, not even a trace of joy on his face. He turned to face Chun-Ong and shouted, "Apocalypse, let's work together. He is the sincerity I brought. This world has decayed. Mutated humans are a new force. It was a mistake to be discriminated against and oppressed for a long time, but it was also the common cause of all mutants. Charles wanted to keep peace with humans, but I think that war is the only way to fight for space for the mutated humans." Magneto said with emotion, "Every brother and sister is precious, they are the power of our mutants. If you can, you can. If possible, I don't want to hurt them, but in the process of struggle, there will be sacrifices, whether it's ours or the X-Men's. For our common cause, there are some decisions we have to make. We just ask for the right to live under this blue sky." Storm and Scott's hearts sank little by little. If Apocalypse and Magneto worked together, it would be a disaster for the X-Men and humanity. Without Magneto, the only person who could restrain Skynet, they would be helpless. On the other hand, the Professor and Wolverine looked at Chun-Ong calmly, not seeming to be worried about this. "Then what position do you think mutants should have?" Chun-Ong seemed very interested. "We will be free, not forced or bound, not discriminated against or harmed. We will build a country of our own." Magneto said seriously, "Give those who have the power, give them the corresponding identity and status. This is the law of the establishment of order. Your request doesn't seem to be too much, so where is the position of humans in your blueprint?" Chun-Ong asked. "Peaceful coexistence. I believe that one day all humans will become mutants. I look forward to that day." "What you said is very tempting, but it doesn't seem to be useful. The position of a force is not determined by the leader, but by the political position of the majority of members." Chun-Ong evoked a wisp of electromagnetic wave in the air, and the image of a member of the Brotherhood appeared in the air. The white man's face was covered with fur like a monkey's. His fingernails were sharp and he looked like a gorilla. He held a glass of wine and seemed to be playing with it out of boredom. Soon, he fixed his eyes on a young woman who was passing by the bar. With a light leap, he scurried to the roof of the bar and hid behind the young woman. In the alley, the mutant jumped down from a high place and rushed towards the young woman. However, he was frozen in the air. Chun-Ong gently moved his fingers, and an invisible rope wrapped around his head. The rope became tighter and tighter, and the sound of his spine breaking could be heard. The gorilla twitched twice and stopped moving. Your men don't seem to think that way. They see mutants as a kind of identity, status, and power. They only have the idea of ruling humans, but they don't have the desire to coexist peacefully with humans. They want to return all the injustice, discrimination, and abuse they have suffered to humans. Chen-Ong smiled and said, "To be fair, this is not wrong, but who told me to be a human? My position has always been on the side of humans, and I am not interested in building a 21st-century mutant colonial country with you, ruling the world through violence and abilities. Your brothers and sisters, those losers who live in the lower class, dream of one day becoming the followers of the masters of humanity. They use tobacco, alcohol, and violence to numb themselves, and use the power of their abilities to determine their status. They don't seem to fit the role of a collaborator in my mind. Have they ever been to school?" Chen-Ong spread his hands and said, "Look, you're counting on a bunch of street thugs, and you seem to be missing a beer bar. You didn't even write an excellent autobiography in prison. Are you an art student? You have no bargaining chips, and no ability. I thought I would see a group of SS soldiers in the Brotherhood, but I didn't expect it to be a bunch of hippies. I've already said it very clearly, so can you let go of my allies?" Chen-Ang's last words shocked everyone present. They looked at the professor and saw that his wheelchair was being lowered bit by bit. Wolverine and Stormwind rushed forward to protect the professor. Magneto used all his strength and was unable to resist the gravitational force of Chen-Ong. His own magnetic field against Chen-Ong, who was powered by a super-large electromagnetic generator, was not an exaggeration to say that it was like hitting a stone with an egg. When the power reached a certain level, control was the key to determining the comparison. At any time, he could use the electromagnetic generator to borrow millions of tons of gravity from the Earth to fight against Magneto, who was relying on himself. I should formally introduce myself. The professor is my partner. Together, we will promote the convergence of mutants and humans. Even if it is a cooperation, I must choose the right target. Students from a relatively superior family, who are dependent on human society, protected by parents and family, and fully educated in the mutant school will be the main force in the future integration with humans. Among them, there will be many outstanding scientists and elites. I will work with the professor to develop the abilities of the mutants from another aspect. The purpose of the mutant school will be to control and protect, to special abilities, make us more outstanding. Of course, our cooperation and confrontation are not contradictory. The professor is also trying to stop my plan to destroy the world." Chen-Ong laughed and said, "So, I will let the X-Men go. The Brotherhood will not be so lucky. My laboratory is already vacant, Magneto." To be continued. Chapter 101. The steel platform beneath his feet let out an unbearable wail. An invisible magnetic field pulled this monster that weighed tens of thousands of tons. Magneto sneered. The powerful magnetic field enveloped the huge shadow in front of him. Insignificance and colossal, steel and metal, at this moment, formed an absurd contrast. Cent pound in front of the steel throne, Magneto, who was as small as an ant, erupted with unimaginable power from his weak body. The violent magnetic field even caused the stone ruins between them to flicker with electricity. These highly resistive objects emitted blazing heat. In the violent magnetic field, the air was scorched and distorted. The concrete melted into a magma-like liquid. The small creatures that had been living here leisurely were swept by the powerful electromagnetic waves, paralyzing their underdeveloped brains. Following that, microwave and high-frequency waves roasted them. The small creatures quickly turned black and then burst into flames. The huge steel monster that weighed several tons actually made a creaking sound. Some of the structures that were not closely connected bent and twisted to a degree visible to the naked eye, stretching out their metal structures towards Magneto. Skynet's unified magnetic field was compressed to the extreme. Some of the tiny nanomachines fell off nearby, unable to be controlled. The surging lava, flowing electricity, and melting steel made this place look like hell. But Chen Ong stood at the top of the throne in hell, looking down at the scorched and twisted steel thrown around him. The more he looked, the more ferocious he became, making him look like the demon king on the throne. Then, Chen Ong did something that was very much in line with his current style. The steel thrown under his feet began to change drastically. The front half of the throne fell off directly, forming a half-moon cliff, and Chen Ong stood at the top of the moon, looking down at the steel throne that was undergoing a violent change. This huge half of the throne. Soon, countless unique technological structures appeared on its body, like a gigantic object pieced together from many modules. A light blue energy shield enveloped their bodies. An elliptical, flat spaceship stopped on the ground. The energy shield isolated them from contact with the magnetic field. Other smaller pieces of steel formed several X-shaped fighter jets that hovered around the spaceship. They formed a few fighters that looked like an X, hovering around the ship. If Anakin were here, he would have found them very familiar. The X-Wing fighter and the Millennium Falcon. To the astonishment of the professor and the others, the anti-gravity engine of the Millennium Falcon slowly started up, and the spacecraft flew smoothly into the air. Magneto could do nothing about it, and could only watch as the anti-infantry laser cannon on its abdomen aimed at everyone present. The powerful firepower of the four-barreled laser cannon. The people below almost suffered a disaster. A fiery red hole the size of a bowl was opened in the White Queen's diamond body. She barely supported herself from falling. The defense of a scorched diamond was obviously not as strong as she had imagined. Half of Wolverine's body was almost vaporized, but it was nothing to him. It was obviously a trivial matter. His face only twitched in pain. Half of his body recovered, as if time was flowing backward. In Chen Ang's eyes, rather than saying that it was a healing ability, it was more accurate to say that it had solidified his body's state of time. How could there be a recovery ability that didn't require material items? What about the law of conservation of matter? Magneto awkwardly avoided the laser in the air, but obviously, the unimaginably fast laser weapons would not give them much chance to dodge. Not giving them too many chances to dodge, the X-Wing fighter easily shot down several fighter jets sent by the U.S. government. The titanium alloy body was as fragile as paper. The fighter jets skimmed over the water and hit the aircraft carrier parked outside New York Harbor. 3 X-Wing fighters formed a formation and destroyed the First Fleet's formation. The desperate soldiers stood on the sunken steel tomb. General Hank, who was leading the team, connected the call with Washington and roared crazily, "What kind of enemy did you make us face? Aliens? I saw the Millennium Falcon and the X-Wing fighter. Next time, please send the Jedi to carry out the mission." There was only silence on the other side. A solid steel missile hit his ship. The general was surprised to see that the missile melted on the hull. Whether it was the warship that was flooding or the aircraft carrier that was about to sink, an invisible change was taking place. The soldiers were surprised to see that the core of the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier emitted a red light, and a keel that was not on the design plan was spread out on the warship. The warship made a sound of being overwhelmed, and the soldiers who fell into the sea were surprised to find that they were taken off from under their bodies by a giant steel hand. The aircraft carrier stood up on the sea, it transformed into a huge robot, and carefully placed the soldiers on some intact lifeboat. "Go. Poor humans, leave the battlefield." The steel giant showed a strange and kind smile. He pulled out the alloy sword behind him and pointed to the center of Manhattan. "I am Optimus Prime, Transformer, attack!" Shockwave reporting. Ironhide reporting. The surrounding cruisers and destroyers were like Optimus Prime subservient. As the X-Wing flew over their heads, a crimson fighter suddenly transformed and floated in the air, sneering at Optimus Prime. "You're the dumbest AI I've ever seen." Master didn't create us to save these puny humans. Wage war, soldier. Red Tarantula, Master is doing this for peace. We have no right to deprive other life forms of their right to live. I am not your Decepticon, you have no right to order me to do anything, Optimus Prime said. Trash without an energy shield, I really don't know why Master created you. I hope you can resist electromagnetic interference, otherwise you will really be trash, and Skynet will not forgive you. Skynet has no will, I follow Master's wish for peace. Optimus Prime saw the surrounding Transformers, placed the Marines, and pointed his sword straight at Manhattan. Soldiers, crush them with the will of Master. The steel giants, hundreds of meters tall, pounced on Manhattan, and like a sharp knife, they pierced into the center of the encirclement. Magneto heard a scream coming from behind him, and he hurriedly rushed forward, and an alloy blade tens of meters tall was inserted behind him. The steel giants, stepping into the territory of Manhattan, inserted their hands into the tower, and bowed to Chen-Ong. The silver-white metal fluid spread to their bodies, transforming their relatively fragile bodies. Magneto put a huge magnetic field on them, but the clever AI easily broke away from the restraint, and they gently shook. They slid away from Magneto's restraint. With intelligent robots, with their huge weight and power, they can always break away from the restraint in the early stage of Magneto's magnetic restraint. On the contrary, Magneto was forced into a dangerous situation. The White Queen covered her wound, and in her eyes, there were images reminding her of the actions of several huge giants 30 seconds in advance. If it weren't for this, Magneto would have been killed by the laser attack. She saw Chen-Ong standing leisurely on the tower, looking at them. The White Queen ignored the professor's obstruction in the mental network and climbed the tower. Her psionic ability shielded the professor's control and directly received the information transmitted by the electronic will and the prophet. Hard diamond body. He climbed up the steel with ease, which was unexpected. She easily stood in front of Chen-Ong. The moment she saw Chen-Ong, the image transmitted by the prophet disappeared, leaving only 2 blood-red words, "Run." But the White Queen ignored it and walked towards Chen-Ong with a smile. The diamond cut through the steel barrier in front of her and easily broke through the electromagnetic barrier of the high-temperature area. She smiled and said, "Diamonds are afraid of high temperature, but I am an exception. Diamonds are arranged by carbon atoms. I hope you are an exception." Chen-Ong smiled at her, and an extremely subtle gravitational wave distorted the pressure on the surface of her body. Graphite can be turned into diamond at high temperatures and high pressures, but diamond can be turned into graphite by modifying some gravitational parameters between atoms. The White Queen became the Black Queen, and her graphite skin replaced her diamond body. Her psionic ability could not break through Chen-Ang's mental barrier. Her beauty, which she was proud of, was not even as attractive as her ability to attract Chen-Ang's attention. Skynet, design an experiment. I want to see if this change is temporary or permanent. Chen-Ong casually decided the future fate of the White Queen. Diamond skin can survive normally. Maybe we have found another active element. I hope she can surprise us like Steel Man. On the other side, with the cooperation of other mutants, Magneto finally bound several smaller spaceships. Optimus Prime fought alone, and Chen-Ong controlled Skynet and issued a series of orders. The battleships and fighters in the air disintegrated and reorganized in full view of the crowd. The Millennium Falcon-shaped battleship turned into a robot slightly smaller than Optimus Prime. He carried a shield generator, a blue oval shield in his hand like a shield, a laser cannon on his shoulder, and a high-frequency light blade in one hand. He sneered at Optimus Prime. "Soft-hearted fool. Decepticon, follow me." "Following your orders, Megatron." The 3 X-Wing fighters transformed into several slightly smaller robots and rushed towards the combative police in the distance under the leadership of Red Spider. Megatron ignored Optimus Prime and aimed his laser cannon at Magneto, who was entangled with him, and fired repeatedly. Magneto, who had predicted this battle from the Prophet, quickly dodged. Unfortunately, Optimus Prime was hit. Red Spider slapped Wolverine away, and Scott's laser was easily blocked by the energy shield. Scott helped Wolverine up and asked anxiously, "How do you restrain the energy shield? How do you fight against Skynet's energy shield?" "Shaw," Wolverine gasped. "What, can you explain?" Scott was surprised. "It's Sebastian Shaw," Logan said wearily. Scott took a step back in surprise and said in shock, "Isn't he dead? Humans always have a way." Wolverine smiled strangely. A figure stood in front of Red Arachnid. Iceman and Pyro guarded the professor and retreated with Lady Storm's word. Red Arachnid's energy shield was easily absorbed by the figure. His body glowed with a hot red light and expanded strangely. A small ball of light came out of his mouth. The shockwave sent Red Spider's head flying. His red palm broke through Red Spider's steel body and penetrated its chest. The hot palm melted the surface of the body and penetrated its energy core. Red Spider's laser eyes were extinguished. An agile steel man leaped over from afar and slashed at the figure with a long blade light. The energy of the high-frequency light blade was quickly absorbed by the figure. Wei Zhentian let out a confused sound as he watched the figure dodge in front of him and throw the light ball in his mouth towards the figure's chest. Megatron blocked the attack with his energy shield, but Magneto had already restrained him from behind. The figure rushed toward his energy shield, trying to repeat the process, but an alloy knife rushed out from the side and cut him in half. Four-piece. Optimus Prime slashed the mysterious figure. Megatron also broke free from Magneto's restraint. For war and conquest. It roared and slapped Magneto away. Magneto, who blocked the blow with a magnetic field, was badly shaken in his internal organs. Blood oozed out of his mouth and nose, and he got up from the ground with some difficulty. He looked around. The Mutants' Brotherhood's Demonis, Swamp, and Crocodile were forced into a corner by Ironhide and a few other spaceships. On the other side, Optimus Prime raised his sword and lifted Stormwind high into the air. Iceman was penetrated by Megatron's laser cannon. Although his elementalized body recovered from the damage, it was difficult for him to continue fighting. Pyro, Wolverine, and the two Decepticons were locked in battle. A feeling of death arose in Magneto's heart. He looked blankly at Chun-Ong standing on the tower. From beginning to end, he just calmly watched them fight to the death without the slightest intention of making a move. Staring at the dead mysterious figure, Magneto lifted his mask, revealing the face of Sebastian Shaw. Chapter 102. The fingers of Sebastian's corpse on the ground suddenly trembled. Under the skin of his corpse, a layer of crimson light was flowing. No one noticed that the part of his body that was cut off at the waist did not bleed. Instead, a layer of black unknown substance sealed his wound. Chun-Ong stopped Skynet's extermination operation. He even asked Skynet to stop reporting this situation to the combat units present. The ribs of Sebastian's upper body protruded from the spine and trembled like bone claws. The delicate carapace structure was like that of an arthropod. His head flipped upwards, and a crack appeared on his skull. A flesh cocoon struggled to break out from his back. A compound eye was the first to break free, followed by a lower jaw, a grayish-black back, and a pair of wrinkled fleshy structures. A crouching worm struggled out of its upper body. It opened its fleshy wings against the wind, and two tentacles full of sensitive tentacles were nimbly probing the surrounding electromagnetic waves. The flesh moth that was half the height of a human flapped its flesh wings gently and rose into the air. It followed the electromagnetic waves in the sky and flew in that direction. On Sebastian's lower body, a worm that looked like an earthworm dug through the layer of flesh and burrowed into the ground. Chun-Ong looked at the two mutants and searched for their information in his mind. As expected, the two prehistoric creatures that were 80% similar to each other were recalled by Chun-Ong. "You guys really gave me a surprise," he said joyfully. The moth flapped its wings. In front of the huge Iron Man, it was not eye-catching at all. Its surface rippled with the color of flesh. The fine fluff changed its color and became very similar to the environment. The fluff blocked the electromagnetic radar of the Decepticon, allowing the moth to quietly fly above Wei Zhentian's head. The flesh-winged moth popped out its bony claw-like mouth and stopped above Wei Zhentian's head. The moment the energy shield touched its body, the fluff outside its body seemed to have encountered a delicious meal. It greedily absorbed the energy. The energy shield on Wei Zhentian's body flickered twice. The moth's mouth probed into the circuit of his body. The moth was like a bottomless space. He was absorbing Wei Zhentian's energy without restraint. Under the stimulation of the energy, it grew even more structures, and its body fused with the steel in Megatron's body. The nanomachines that had lost their energy source were just some more intricate steel. It was easily fused with by these terrifying cells. Wei Zhentian was shocked. He aimed the laser cannon on his shoulder at the flesh moth and fired a few shots. The laser burned the surface of the flesh moth, but it soon shed its charred skin, and a silver-gray structure that was a combination of metal and cells appeared on the body underneath. Wei Zhentian grunted, and he forcefully separated the part of his body that was infested by the flesh moth. The steel that weighed several tons fell off his back. From the shedding tissue of the moth, it transformed again. However, this time, its body glowed with a metallic luster. On the other side, one of the Decepticons that was attacking the Burning Man collapsed, and a giant twisted flesh worm crawled out from its back. It aimed at another Decepticon and started shooting plasma. The twisted energy ball shot toward Chen Ang's back. A man in black was clinging to the top of the tower. Chen Ong only stretched out 2 fingers and pinched this extremely unstable plasma ball. The twisted gravity bound the plasma and maintained its stability. The energy intensity is not bad, but the efficiency is a little low. Plasma is the plasma. Without the restraint of magnetism or gravity, the energy dissipates too much, and the speed is not fast. Although it can cause great damage, it is not an ideal weapon. Chen Ong crushed the plasma ball in his hand, and 2 gaseous electric snakes coiled around his fingers. They kept swimming around his palm. Chen Ong looked at the man in black, or the person behind him, and smiled. Compared to plasma, I prefer high-energy waves. They are directional, fast, stable, and the energy efficiency is also very high. The 2 electric snakes disappeared at his fingertips with a flick of his fingers. The man in black opposite him revealed his face under the mask. It was also Sebastian. His body began to turn into ashes. Chen Ong used high-energy electromagnetic waves to precisely heat his body, destroying all biological tissues, leaving only some carbon elements and trace elements. The second, third, and more men in black appeared near the tower. They swallowed the energy around them and turned it into their own moving energy, approaching the tower at an amazing speed. Chen Ong finally moved. He stepped out and came to the opposite side of Magneto. The magnetic field passed through his body, but it was repelled like it was insulated. I can't play anymore. I'm going to clear the place. Chen Ong laughed. Magneto snorted coldly. I hope you won't regret your choice today. Also, thank you for reminding me that electromagnetism is one of the basic forces of the universe. See its power. A powerful electromagnetic field enveloped the entire tower, shaking this huge object. Magneto controlled the electromagnetic force, and the jumping electrons formed an electric current, driving the electrons on the periphery of the metal atoms to make a warp movement, destroying the structural stability of the steel tower. Under the powerful propulsion, the tower began to be pulled up little by little. The steel tower, tens of thousands of tons, was easily moved in Magneto's hands. You let me know that objects themselves have a magnetic field. Not only can I affect it from the outside, but I can also control it from the inside. This is me, the Magneto who controls everything. There's a question I've always wanted to ask you. Chen Ong was not surprised. Instead, he asked slowly, force is mutual. That is to say, the force between you and steel objects should be mutual. But how do you lift tens of thousands of tons of steel without any force on yourself? Chen Ong asked curiously. Magneto did not answer. He strengthened the magnetic field that enveloped the steel throne. Chen Ong stretched out his finger and pointed in the void, and a little gravitational ripple spread out. I guess when you lifted this steel tower, the reaction force should be borne by the huge planet under our feet. A mere weight of tens of thousands of tons is certainly not a big problem in the magnetic field of the entire Earth. But now that I've bound the geomagnetic force under your feet with gravity, what will you do? Before Magneto could say anything, the spring holding his body together broke. His body was like a piece of paper, pulled by the huge force of the steel throne and pulled like a rope. Seeing that he was about to hit the tower and be smashed into minced meat, Chen Ong pulled with his right hand and a strong gravitational force protected him. So you'll die. Chen Ong sighed. Chen Ong casually pointed at him, and Magneto felt an extremely subtle force binding his body. Every time he wanted to use his ability, he felt that his ability, which was usually like an arm, did not react at all. You shouldn't be called Magneto. If you can only control steel, why not call yourself Iron Man? As long as you can control 5 milliamperes of electricity, the magnetic field created can bind your ability. If you can't go deep into the atomic level and control nuclear force, electricity, and magnetism, what kind of Magneto is that? The electromagnetic force affects all matter. It controls atoms, goes deep into the atom, and reveals the secrets of the interconversion between mass and energy. Not to mention the force between nucleons, you can't even control the electromagnetic field of atomic rotation. In the field of electromagnetism, you still have too much to learn. Chen Ong handed Magneto and other experimental materials to Megatron. Megatron had transformed into the Millennium Falcon spaceship, and inside it was Chen Ang's laboratory. Although such a laboratory could be built with a wave of his hand as long as Skynet existed, the semi-finished products and materials inside were still very valuable. Like a plague, a group of people who looked exactly like Sebastian had already rushed into Skynet's battle group. A man in black also appeared in front of Chen Ong. As soon as he arrived, he raised his hands, indicating that he meant no harm. Mr. Tianchi, we admire your scientific research ability very much. Although you have done some irrational things before, everything can be forgiven, right? There is no conflict between us, and there is a strong complementarity between us. There is no need for us to choose confrontation. I think cooperation is a win-win situation for both of us. We have materials and a lot of resources, and you have countless ideas. Skynet has proven your ability, but it is unrealistic to rely on it to rule the world. The emergence of mutants can be traced back to thousands of years ago. You are not the first person to discover their potential. Chen Ong knew that the man in front of him was just a communication device, and the real mastermind was talking to him through this body. They were the masters of the capital world, and they had great power and influence. Even Chen Ong didn't expect that they had already broken through the technology of cloning. This was not only a scientific problem, but it also involved ethics and human experimentation. Playing with life was too much of a violation of experimental ethics. Even Chen Ong, although he was making steady progress in the development of this technology, he had always lacked the ability to realize it. Now, someone had given him the ready-made technology. Sebastian's clone, your scientific research ability is worthy of recognition. In terms of genetic hybridization, you are even ahead of me. Darwin, the mutant, has the ability to adapt to the environment. It's very creative to combine ancient genes with this adaptive arcana and graft it on Sebastian. But you must have encountered obstacles in the adaptation of the two abilities. In your eyes, Darwin's ability is undoubtedly a kind of evolution, but you can't combine the two abilities organically. You can't combine Sebastian's ability to absorb energy with Darwin's ability to evolve. Create a super creature that has energy and can constantly adapt and evolve. The voice on the other side was stunned for a moment and then laughed. It is indeed apocalypse. You have figured out the direction of our experiment in just a few minutes. You are wrong. Chen Ong looked at the clone in front of him. Gravity gently controlled the genes in his body, and Skynet under his feet manipulated the extremely subtle electromagnetic force to control his cells, imitating the bioelectricity in his body. The voice on the other side found that he had lost control of the clone, but he was not surprised. This experimental body is a gift for Mr. Apocalypse. He replied politely, and the last syllable was a little upturned. Chen Ong could hear the pretentious aristocratic tone. To be continued. Chapter 103. You've made a mistake. Darwin's ability is not evolution but atavism. You've made a mistake. He excavated the genes of ancient creatures in his body and transformed them into corresponding abilities. Fish, birds, shells, these ancient creatures have adapted to almost all the environments on Earth. Their genes have been passed down and exist in our bodies. The best reading experience is in Phoenix. Chen Ong controlled the clone in front of him to degenerate into an orangutan with slender arms, thick body hair, and agile movements. Then, a pair of wings grew on his back. His sternum and body shape also changed accordingly. His bones became hollow and his body became slender. Under Chen Ang's feet, the electric current provided him with energy. Darwin excavated this power and developed this treasure house. He can transform ancient creatures, but as long as he falls into an unfamiliar environment and leaves Earth, this ability will not be able to adapt to the environment. You should have experimented whether they can't survive in a vacuum. They should not be hibernating. They can only imitate anaerobic bacteria or degenerate into cyanobacteria. The voice on the other side was silent. He forced a smile and said awkwardly, "You've guessed right again, Mr. Apocalypse. But are you going to agree to our conditions?" Sebastian had degenerated into a velociraptor. His cold eyes stared at Chen Ong with a trace of fear, as if he had met a higher-level creature on the food chain. "I should thank you for providing me with an excellent material to decipher ancient genes. More than 90% of the genes in the human body are hyperactive genes, but they are not superfluous to the previous evolutionary path. With this ancient genetic treasury and living teaching materials for evolution, I can continue experimenting with some of my ideas. I thought we would have to wait until the gene bank is built," Chen Ong said happily. "So, Mr. Apocalypse's proposal is, you are the top elites of mankind. Unfortunately, you are determined to maintain the existing order. To protect your interests, you refuse to progress, or rather, refuse that is not conducive to your progress. But I won't do anything for some inexplicable people. Slow down my advance on my feet. So, I only give you one choice. Adapt to the changes I bring, or destroy. Mr. Tianqi, do you need to reconsider?" The voice on the other end of the line stiffened. "Will you consider my choice?" "Of course. You don't need to tell me. I don't care about your choices, because that's your business. I'm just going to do it. You can choose." Chen Ong smiled. The voice on the other side became cold. "I hope that the next time we talk, you will be calmer. Goodbye, Apocalypse. What did you do to me?" That voice quickly spoke again, flustered and exasperated. "It's useless for you to threaten us like this. It doesn't matter if I live or die. You will only invite more painful revenge. Why do you think this call is so important? It's under your control, and the call is between both parties. There are some things that I want you to see." In a secret meeting room, the important figures of the planet sat in a circle. In the middle of them, a young man spoke in Chen Ang's voice. "What do you want?" An old man asked. If anyone could see him, they would be shocked. His wealth was one of the top few in the United States. But now, he was sitting in the crowd like an ordinary person. In the holographic projection opposite him, some of the more powerful figures were sitting there. The holographic projection flickered and turned into an image of Chen-Ong. "I don't have any requests. Even if I did, you wouldn't be able to do it. Don't overestimate your abilities. Young man, I know you." In a manner far away in Europe, an old man played with the ring in his hand. He said slowly, "I used to have friends like you, but Earth is far from as simple as you think." "That's right. Just like how you think I'm an alien, but I'm not. Earth is very complicated. You can't play with it." Chen-Ong smiled. His 3D projection sat down. "You're in France. That's a good place. It has a history of 3,000 years. When did you make your fortune? 300 years, or even less. From the perspective of space, Earth is just one of the billions of planets in the Milky Way. From the perspective of time, this period of time is just an insignificant period in the long river of human history. I'm very curious. Why do you think you're so noble? Affecting an insignificant planet in a short period of time. I'm a person who can affect the fate of hundreds of thousands of universes in a minute. When did I come to see you? How would I have so much time to argue with you?" Chen-Ong controlled the hand of gravity and strangled the old man's throat. "Remember, whether you're an individual or an organization, in front of me, you only have one choice. Adapt to me or be destroyed by me." He casually broke the neck of the underground emperor of Europe and casually threw the corpse on the ground. He smiled at everyone who saw this image and said, "Now I declare, I'm here. Are you ready? Ready to die and be destroyed? Are you ready to make a choice that will affect your life? Are you ready to face an unpredictable fate? Are you ready to go with the flow? You're not the hand at the back, but the mantis under the wheel of history. We decide the fate of the world, and you adapt to it. It's that simple." Everyone fell silent. When they saw a person with deep influence, who could even decide the fate of several countries, and who could be considered to have a noble status among them, being easily twisted by Chen-Ong, they finally realized that this was not a negotiation or a financial game. This was a war. And war would kill people. They exchanged glances and made a decision together. An orange-yellow button was pressed. The electromagnetic waves sent their decision far away. Chen-Ong witnessed all of this. He watched quietly and had no intention of stopping them. "Bring out your strength. Only then will you gain more from this experiment." Chen-Ong smiled and looked at these people who were like duckweed. History had never been created by them. When these jackals hiding in the dark faced the true creator of history, they could only let fate decide their fate. On the steel throne, the electromagnetic generator finally revealed its brutal side. High-energy electromagnetic waves filled the space. Any living creature and matter quickly turned yellow and withered in the electromagnetic wave. Sebastian's clones continuously pounced from the rear, absorbing the energy in the air with their special abilities. Clones with extraordinary strength and astonishing agility disintegrated rapidly in the air. High-energy electromagnetic waves heated up their bodies. Then, the irresistible dissociation energy disintegrated the magnetic field of their body cells. In such a harsh environment, no living creature could survive. No living creature could survive. Lasers, infrasonic sound wave weapons, gravitational weapons. Skynet controlled the steel throne and revealed hundreds of cannon turrets. They controlled all sorts of physics and attacked the clone army. Tens of thousands of clones were annihilated in the electromagnetic torrent. Only a few clones managed to adapt to the harsh environment. They turned into all sorts of aberrations and retreated. The army of clones that blotted out the sky and covered the earth fused into their midst, forming a gigantic meatball. This strange creature with no eyes and no mouth braved the destructive attacks of Skynet to advance. Its body was continuously destroyed, but it regenerated again and again. With the endless resources of the clones behind it, It expanded its body crazily and extracted energy from Skynet. Most of Skynet's weapons could no longer harm this creature that was like an energy black hole. However, this creature was still plundering energy and matter. The steel that it devoured would no longer be used as raw materials. Instead, it would fuse with the huge creature. Skynet was getting stronger as it fought. This was the first time they encountered such a logistics black hole. All of their advantages were useless. The destruction of Skynet was right in front of them. Phagocytic cells. Interesting, Chenong commented. In the distance, Scott suddenly turned to Wolverine. Can Skynet do anything against such an attack? Its destruction seems to be right in front of us. Skynet will never be destroyed. As long as there's one iron ion left on Earth, it can survive. Even if there's no iron ion left, it can develop into another form. Logan sighed. It might be heavily injured and go into hiding for a period of time until it surpasses its opponent's technology. Logan hesitated again. He frowned. Even if it's the first generation of Skynet, it shouldn't be this weak. Its reaction isn't intense. There are many advanced technologies that it hasn't brought out yet. What technologies? Lady Stormsword frowned. Superluminous particle acceleration, spatial distortion, atomic shock bombs, solar fusion strikes, gravity wells, what are these? Lady Stormsword was a little dizzy. Space physics and energy physics aren't up to par. It's better not to think about these. Let me think, what clone army will be added to Manhattan in the future? I remember we only encountered it when Skynet was developing its global strategy. The timeline has been messed up by us. The first Skynet base in Manhattan was built because Houston Observatory. A researcher ran over in a hurry and accidentally fell to the ground. The people behind him ignored him and stepped on him. Dozens of researchers in white coats ran around the observation room in panic. A white-haired old man shouted at the sky, "Ah! The apocalypse is here, it's here!" Washington, this is Houston. We're observing an asteroid with a diameter of 20 kilometers approaching Earth. It's moving very fast. We only have 3 minutes left. The landing point is New York, Manhattan. It can split the entire Americas into 2 continental shelves. We humans will be the second dinosaur. It's too late. Even the nuclear bombs are too late. It's not a matter of the number of deaths, but whether humans can continue to exist. The United States is finished. Humanity is finished. Its power can't be compared to tens of thousands of nuclear bombs. There's nothing we can do. I say, let God bless us. God bless the United States. Wolverine dropped the cigar in his hand. He said in a daze, the first Skynet base was built from a metallic asteroid with a diameter of more than 20 kilometers. That's why it's called the Swallowing Star. There's no meteorite here. Lady Stormsword was confused. Scott scratched his head. Wait, you mean this meteorite fell now? The super technology here is the gravity well. No wonder Skynet didn't react. It's adjusting the parameters of the gravity well. Most of its experience was spent on the asteroid. Will the 20-kilometer asteroid destroy New York? Lady Stormsword asked anxiously. There are millions of people here. Apocalypse is a lunatic. Not New York, but the entire world. Wolverine sighed. It's going to destroy the world with a meteorite just to destroy a monster. God, can we stop it? It's too late. But we don't have to worry. The world wasn't destroyed last time. It might not be the same this time, right? Wolverine pretended to be relaxed. You lunatic. There wasn't a clone army last time, but now there is. There wasn't a monster last time, but now there is. We can't just sit here and do nothing. God, what's your name? Lady Stormsword put her hands together and prayed sincerely. At that moment, the people of the American continent felt something strange above their head. A strange vibration came from the sky. In Houston, the researcher sat on the ground. His forehead was drenched in sweat. He said to the lady from the White House on the other side of the phone, The meteorite is about to enter the atmosphere. It's entering very smoothly. It's the best angle. It's a success in one go. In 3 seconds, we'll be able to enjoy the Earth's great opposition. This is the beauty of the apocalypse. Dear, what's your name? The people of New York looked up and saw the sun falling. A dazzling sun fell towards them. It was brilliant and extremely beautiful. It was like a meteor streaking across the night sky. The meteorite fell from the sky and burned itself. For a moment, human civilization might be just like this meteorite, short but brilliant. In the conference room, everyone sat paralyzed on the ground and looked at the approaching asteroid in the 3D projection. These noble big shots were sweating profusely. They looked like dogs that had fallen into the water. In their hearts, they wished they could turn back time and never provoke this lunatic apocalypse again. To hell with the clones. It can be discussed. Everything can be discussed. A few of the most powerful people on Earth begged. We can take a step back. You don't have to destroy the asteroid. Stop it. Please, I beg you. They could already see the outline of the meteorite. An old man collapsed on the ground and clutched his heart. You lunatic, no one would do something like this. Chen Ong stood on the top of the throne. The impact of the asteroid blew his hair away. I'm the enemy of the world. And the savior of the world. P.S. Seeking monthly tickets and subscriptions. Everyone, please don't let my ass get blown up. Chapter 104. It was noon in New York, but it was late at night in Beijing. 3 River Pavilion. The people who slept late were surprised to see that it was dawn in the east. The sun fell from the sky, bringing flames and light back to the place where it rose. The golden flames and dazzling light illuminated the land in the east, then swept over the sea, the wilderness and the mountains, falling toward the east coast of America. This was the sun that cut across the sky, and it was also the demon god in golden feathers. At this moment, the whole world suddenly fell silent. The people in power who could easily decide the life and death of a country, the big shots who attacked a country in the financial market, at this moment, could only pray with their heads in their hands. Power, wealth, and even strength and ambition seemed so laughable and insignificant in this world-destroying disaster. These people in power who felt that a disaster was imminent were extremely envious of the ignorant ordinary people at this moment. At least they did not have to experience the feeling of suffocation in the countdown to death, and they did not have to deeply feel their own powerlessness. The American Air Force on the West Coast took off. They received orders from their superiors, and in just 2 minutes, they took off with strategic weapons. At the same time, 2 nuclear missiles with a yield of more than 25 million tons set off from the base in the Rocky Mountains, forming the second line of defense. Several strategic-level mutants received an emergency notice and formed the third line of defense. In just a short minute, 3 lines of defense. To destroy a metal asteroid weighing hundreds of millions of tons, and at the same time, to ensure the safety of Earth, this was simply an impossible task. The fragility of the atmosphere could make their actions suicidal at any time. The nuclear weapons of the United States could destroy the living environment dozens of times, but they could not do anything to protect themselves. Are you crazy? Detonating a nuclear bomb in the stratosphere, with a yield of 25 million tons at that. Do you know that doing this will shroud the whole world in nuclear waste? Within 50 years, the global safety level of radiation will seriously exceed the limit. You are turning the whole world into a Nobel. The president pulled the military representative's tie. He waved his fist, and his expression was extremely fierce. Without my order, who allowed you to do this? We did not have time to ask for instructions, and directly initiated the emergency filing. This is in accordance with the law. The military representative's expression was gloomy. He snatched the tie back from the president and said solemnly, "No matter what the consequences are, we first have to survive. Spending the rest of my life in a nuclear base is much better than being destroyed by a destructive tsunami brought by a meteorite." the military representative thought to himself. He could definitely hide in the nuclear base with his family, but he might not be able to survive the collision. How could something that could wipe out an entire biological era be so easy to deal with? In this case, the choice was obvious. Washington could already see the sun skimming across the sky. Its angle of entry was a bit strange. The angle was so small that it was abnormal. Scientists even suggested a special possibility that it could pass the Earth, then escape gravity and bounce out of the atmosphere. Unfortunately, after calculating the asteroid's potential energy and the Earth's gravitational pull could not be calculated. They gave up on this conjecture. The potential energy of the asteroid was no longer enough to break through the first cosmic speed limit. At the outer layer of the atmosphere, its special angle of entry consumed a lot of energy. In fact, it should have been bounced out of the atmosphere. It was like throwing stones into the water. At the thought of this, a figure appeared in everyone's mind. I need a moment to destroy the Statue of Liberty. And to destroy Manhattan, I need 3 seconds. 3 minutes in New York, 3 hours in New York State. 3 days in the United States, even the world only needs 3 weeks. Whether you are a hero or a sinner, whether you are a mutant or an ordinary person, find me and stop me. There was a soft explosion, and the fighter plane exploded into a ball of fireworks before the violent earthquake. The strategic weapons they carried could not cut through the ionosphere outside the meteorite at all. In the radar, the asteroid was invisible at this moment, and no electronic equipment could break through this defense. The nuclear bomb exploded in front of the meteorite. The strategic-level mutant prophet sent guidance data from far away in New York. The professor established a mental network. The precision-guided nuclear bomb accurately exploded in front of the meteorite. This was a specially calculated angle. It was very likely that the meteorite would be dismembered into small pieces. A mushroom cloud appeared in the stratosphere. The ultimate weapon of mankind played its role of destroying the world. The dazzling third and fourth suns appeared in the sky. The 4 suns appeared in the sky together with a trace of the mythical apocalypse. The strange thing was that the brightness of the nuclear bomb seemed to have decreased by several levels. In the distant monitoring instrument, everyone stopped cheering and looked at the instrument that sounded the alarm. They looked at the lit meteorite. A layer or 2 of halos appeared around it, giving it a layer of mythical brilliance. It swallowed the nuclear bomb. A researcher stammered. The fine gravitational halos restrained the nuclear radiation, forming 2 golden halos around the meteorite. From the ground, it looked like the halo of the sun. If someone could see this meteorite, they would be surprised to find that this irregular meteorite was quickly adjusting itself. Molten metal flowed on its surface, etching strange patterns that were full of complex beauty. Gradually, its shape became more and more regular, like a strange-looking bullet. On this meteorite, amazing changes were constantly happening. At the moment when the nuclear bomb exploded, these strange lines suddenly lit up. The invisible gravitational field restrained and tamed this unruly and violent energy, injecting a cardiac stimulant into the meteorite. The gravitational field broke through the blockade of the ionosphere, achieving the communication between Skynet and the meteorite. Skynet First Planet Destroyer Bomb adjustment complete. It can break through the mantle. Do you want to detonate it at the core? Landing point corrected. The target is escaping from the first position. Radar locked. Real-time guidance beginning. First layer of gravitational field unlocked. Core gravitational field ready. Radiation halos in place. First landing point fine-tuning. Outside New York, a few strategic-level mutants were waiting. Shockwave looked at the sky with surprise. The trajectory of the meteorite has changed. Has the apocalypse been fine-tuned? Shockwave shook his head and replied, "No, the physical constants of Manhattan have not changed. This is the minor adjustment made by the asteroid itself. Its target might be the escaping gene mutant." Can we let the base change the location of the mutant's escape? Guide the meteorite to the deep sea and let the water flow buffer it? Storm Lady is still in Manhattan. She can help us deal with the huge amount of water vapor that evaporates. Magneto can also provide a buffer. As for Shockwave, you can suppress the incoming tsunami. I'll be responsible for the geological activity. The base can no longer control the mutant, but the good news is that they still have a certain amount of influence. Now, the mutant has begun to escape to the open sea of Manhattan. However, we only have a minute. It won't be able to get far. I'll stop the meteorite. You guys go chase the mutant away, Card King said decisively. People who had never faced a meteorite falling from the sky could not imagine such power. The earthquake had already destroyed everything that dared to rise into the stratosphere. Even migratory birds that could fly higher fell from the sky. Even though they were far away, their internal organs were still shattered. At the outermost layer, the friction between the meteorite and the air created infrasound and ultrasonic waves. People living on the west coast of the United States were already suffering from nausea and fainting symptoms. Infrasound weapons swept across the United States. Then came the high-frequency ultrasonic wave. Card King faced the first wave of the meteorite and was attacked by a powerful ultrasonic wave. The powerful sound wave energy shattered the surface of his skin. His red muscles were exposed. His armor made of adamantium was like a bone-scraping steel knife. It shattered the fillings and peeled off a layer of his skin. Blue Devil, are you okay? Blue Devil, who was hugging him, replied in a low, muffled voice, my skin is fine. It looks like I can take it. However, it seems like you can't get close anymore. Send me directly to the surface of the meteorite, Card King said decisively. No, the earthquake will shatter us. Moreover, I can't get close to the meteorite protected by the gravitational field. Blue Devil rejected the suggestion directly. But the world is about to be destroyed. What's the point of us living? Can we risk it? Card King said calmly. Impossible. The apocalypse is far better than me in terms of gravity and space. Much better than me. I've read his space physics. I can't understand half of it and can't do the exercises. This isn't a problem that can be solved by fighting. If you can, then you can. If you can't, then you can't. There's no such thing as risking it, Blue Devil advised. Will he destroy the world? Card King tried his best to stabilize himself, allowing Blue Devil to carry him and stay in midair. I don't know if he will this time, but he did it the last time. This is also the reason why I betrayed Magneto. He challenged the apocalypse and was destined to fail. As long as Magneto's understanding of electromagnetism can't surpass the apocalypse, there is no other possibility. He controls the apocalypse of Skynet. As long as he studies it thoroughly, he can replicate the effects of any Esper ability. Furthermore, it will far surpass the original Esper ability. Now, I can't predict what he wants to do. Everything is a mess. Even the Prophet can't see anything related to him. The sun approached the two of them. The powerful earthquake made Card King look incomparably miserable. The meteorite that swept through the void was shockingly fast. They only had one chance to attack. If Card King couldn't detonate the meteorite, their operation this time would be a complete failure. By injecting the meteorite's powerful kinetic energy into the material, this huge bomb had the power to destroy the Earth. Fortunately, Card King could temporarily control it. It might be a good idea to detonate it in outer space. Card King, who had given his all, finally approached the meteorite. His body had already been scorched black. In order to break through the sky's seismic wave and the ionosphere, they had already lost half of their lives. However, when the meteorite crashed into them, Card King still stood in front of it. When his fingertips touched this huge object, the expected shattering of his body and bones didn't happen. There wasn't even a burning sensation. The temperature of thousands of degrees in the outer layer was like an illusion. The cold touch made Card King's mouth open. The expected powerful kinetic energy didn't come. The metal in front of them was like a liquid door, revealing a hollow tunnel. They passed through the asteroid just like that. It's alive. Blue Devil looked at the meteorite in shock. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The residents of New York felt like they had just watched a 1-minute sunrise. They saw the sun, and the blinding light made it hard for them to open their eyes. A giant meteorite with a diameter of 20 kilometers fell from the sky with the power to destroy everything. The cloned Xenogeneic, which was already close to the deep sea, struggled helplessly. It had evolved giant gills and a tail fin. Its body was a few hundred meters long, and its tail created a small tsunami. It struggled helplessly and dove into the deep sea. The meteorite collided with the surface of the water for the first time. It seemed like there was no resistance. It only took 3 seconds for millions of tons of seawater to evaporate into water vapor. The sea that was a few hundred meters deep was sucked dry, revealing dry land. The Xenogeneic immediately evaporated when the meteorite collided with it. The water vapor, which was a few thousand meters high, spread in all directions. Some hidden energy-devouring cells were mixed in with the large amount of matter and were ejected into the atmosphere. These matter would float above the stratosphere for at least 50 years and spread to all parts of the world. The energy-devouring cells were full of expansive energy-devouring cells. It was bound to cause a biochemical crisis. Of course, the premise was that humans could survive the 30 years of harsh winter and the following geological and climatic disasters. However, Chun-Ong did not give it the chance to do so. The large amount of matter around the meteorite seemed to be attracted by a powerful energy. It quickly moved toward the meteorite. The evaporated water vapor, the broken crust, the magma, and the large amount of soil and rocks were tightly pulled to the side of the meteorite. The powerful gravity compressed the large amount of matter to 10 times the density. The nuclear halo exploded. The temperature on the surface of the sun caused the soil and rocks to undergo a qualitative change, forming a glass-like product. The melted matter ball evaporated all the possibility of life existing on it. The gravitational wave caused the nuclear bomb to explode on a relatively narrow surface. The concentrated energy increased the destructive power of light and heat by more than 10 times. This time, even if it was the energy-devouring cells, their survival ability would not be able to survive under this kind of endless carbon-based energy. The gravitational wave cut off the conductive ability of matter. Without the restraint of gravity, the crust lost most of its kinetic energy. The remaining energy was also eliminated when the gravitational wave returned. A meteorite weighing hundreds of millions of tons fell beside the New Yorkers, but they only felt a slight tremor under their feet. They looked into the distance in confusion, looking at the place where the sun disappeared. The sky had regained the appearance of a sun. The New Yorkers looked around in shock. The people on the beach were dumbfounded. The sun had fallen into the sea. They saw the sun with a huge tail of flames sinking into the sea. Then, a cloud pillar that was tens of thousands of meters tall appeared. The tide seemed to have fallen into a bottomless pit. It quickly retreated, revealing the wet bottom of the sea. The hundreds of meters of water line disappeared in front of the people's eyes. The New Yorkers who vaguely knew what had happened screamed and ran away as fast as they could. Behind them, a white curtain connected the sky to the sea. The waves were rolling with white foam, hanging hundreds of meters high. A water curtain that connected the sky rushed toward the New Yorkers. To be continued. Chapter 105. Rex. Huge waves hundreds of meters high pushed from the depths of the Atlantic Ocean to the east coast of the United States. Billions of tons of seawater pressed down from the sky. This kind of pressure that could destroy everything was not something a human body could withstand. This was the first time that New Yorkers had faced the terror of the tsunami head-on, and this moment had also become a nightmare for many people. A huge wall of water swept over from afar, destroying everything in its path at a speed faster than a galloping horse. The stranded cruise ship was swept into the tsunami, producing the sound of steel being crushed and deformed. Many people gave up hope and stopped at the beach in despair. They looked at the grim reaper in the distance. People hugged each other to comfort their uneasy hearts, or hysterically vented their despair and collapse. More people knelt on the ground and prayed devoutly. Tens of thousands of people from the East Coast to New York City looked at the huge waves in the distance. Chen Ong walked leisurely from Manhattan to the shore. His pace was not fast, but every step he took was very far. It was as if he had shrunk hundreds of meters of land into a single step. His lonely figure walking against the tide of people from east to west was particularly obvious. Soon, someone recognized him. Fear, anger, piety, fanaticism, hatred, disgust, and all kinds of different emotions appeared on the faces of these people, but they were always silent. Many old people bowed down and worshipped him. Someone shouted, "The end is near, the end is near. The knight who brought war, famine, plague, and death to us. The kingship of the earth belongs to our Lord, his Christ. He will be king. As for the endless world. Archangel of the Apocalypse, you have brought the apocalypse. The 7 angels have blown the horn of the end." Chen Ong glanced at the fanatical crowd. There were many upper-class elites in suits and leather shoes. There were even intellectuals who had received higher education. They were fanatically chanting the words of the Bible, welcoming the arrival of heaven. The impending disaster and death destroyed their spirit. When people were desperate, they would instinctively look for a new spiritual pillar to support their spiritual world. They would place their hope in an illusory religion to comfort themselves in fear. In history, many fanatics were born this way. "You murderous devil! Madman! Monster! Get out of my way!" Those who had a mental breakdown could choose to support themselves with faith. There was also a hysterical outburst. A young white man rushed out, but before he could reach Chen Ong, he was pinned to the ground by a fanatical believer. He struggled. He cursed, "You monsters in human form invade our home and destroy our happiness. Mutants, get out of here! Mutants, go to hell!" Chen Ong was not interested in looking at them, whether they were believers who put their spirits in religion or racists who were on the verge of collapse, whether they worshipped him as a god or feared him as a devil or a ghost. These people weren't worth him wasting his energy on. People who couldn't control their own minds and souls couldn't refine themselves through changes and blows. A person who could become strong was undoubtedly a weakling. Such weaklings weren't worth his attention. The fishy smell of the seawater had already reached the tip of the pen. The splashing water droplets had even splashed onto the skin of the people closest to it. The cold water droplet. It fell from above like rain, bringing with it a fishy and salty smell, rumbling as it rolled down. The huge wave that came crashing down like a mountain stopped in front of Chen Ong like a huge wall. The giant water wall that stretched for hundreds of miles and the monstrous waves that were hundreds of meters high surrounded the periphery of New York like a wall. The huge amount of seawater brought with it a heart-wrenching pressure, but it was solidified into a dark blue curtain wall. As Chen Ong walked forward step by step, the seawater parted to form a wide passage, revealing the dry ground at the bottom of the sea. Corals and aquatic creatures were exposed to the air, and the cloud pillars in the sky shone brightly. The passage was so wide that it could pass through 8 carriages and extend into the distance. At the end of the passage, the Skynet base broke out of the glassy shell. It was a huge volume with a diameter of nearly 20 kilometers. The dark blue anti-gravity engine under it vibrated slightly, and the huge base floated into the air. The Millennium Falcon spaceship entered the base. Everyone watched as the huge water screen slowly closed up. The turbulent sea surface became extremely calm. Even the huge tsunami that was hundreds of meters tall gradually subsided. The clouds dissipated and the waves receded. The floating metal island reflected the brilliant rays of the sun. All of this made everyone feel suffocated. In the Congress of Washington, the president faced the Congress members with serious expressions. He cleared his throat and said slowly, "Ladies and gentlemen, just yesterday we brushed past the most dangerous and destructive disaster in human history. This is far more dangerous than the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is a deep threat to the survival and continuation of mankind. The United States has reached its most dangerous moment. We are facing the most dangerous technological product since the explosion of knowledge. People who love peace all over the world will not sit and watch this dangerous development and growth. This is a new war, a war that concerns the life and death of a country, the survival of a race, and even the survival of mankind. We are facing a silent declaration of war. Our opponent is not a person, not a mutant, but a new civilization, a new race, an intelligent life created by mankind. Our war with it has already started at a low intensity. This war is not about compromise and interests, nor is it about freedom and dictatorship. It is a war of civilization and survival. Gentlemen, it is time to face up to all of this. We have already suffered several defeats, military defeats. It has taken over the heart of New York, the most brilliant jewel in the crown of the United States. We cannot ignore it because of coexistence. We cannot have illusions because of a short period of peace. The most dangerous moment has arrived. Let us open our eyes and take a look. Look at everything that has happened. Ladies and gentlemen, do you still think that this war has nothing to do with you? As the President, I am issuing the first presidential order of the year. All of the people of the United States, regardless of whether you are white or black, middle class or working class, mutant or ordinary human, unite. Everyone present looked solemn. They stood up straight, and the applause that lasted for a long time resounded in the Congress. The two parties that had been opposing each other for a long time stood together in the face of serious threats to the interests of their own class. The most powerful system on Earth, the war chariot, was slowly moving. With the power of human beings, can they stop it? The Anti-Discrimination Mutants Protection Act was passed. After Chen-Ong proved the terrifying potential of the mutants, they quickly got the corresponding status. Chen-Ong proved that the mutants not only had destructive power, but also a more threatening creative ability. These mutants with all kinds of strange abilities, who knew what they would create? Today, the mutants all over the world set off the study of physics and biology. In higher education this year, the proportion of mutants was as high as 0.5%. No one dared to deny their potential. Under the encouragement of Chen-Ong, more mutants stood up to compete for a higher status in society. A part of the moderates, under the leadership of the professor, expressed their willingness to integrate into the human community. The forgiveness movement started by the professor used family affection and love to inspire the mutants to return to their families. They used universal love to integrate into the human community, popularize the knowledge of mutants, and actively promote the idea that genetic mutations can happen in every family. Defend the human rights of mutants and protect our children. After the professor proved that the origin and mutation of mutants was random, they and the American Mother Alliance launched the forgiveness movement, which allowed thousands of homeless and runaway teenagers to return to their families. The idea of mutants returning to their families broke out. Although the forces of discrimination were still strong, this time, the professor's point of view was finally recognized by mainstream society. A large number of mutated humans began to cooperate with the government to carry out mutual scientific experiments and learning. Many of the mutated humans at the bottom of society obtained the opportunity to be funded by the state. After this behemoth was launched, most of the mutated humans were tied to this chariot. Next was the National Military Adjustment Act. $500 billion of military spending would be invested in the research of cell research, gene coding, high-energy physics, astrophysics, space physics, theoretical physics, and energy physics in the fourth quarter. Microscopic weapons, energy weapons, genetic weapons, biochemical weapons, nuclear weapons, replaced the research projects of traditional weapons and equipment. Tens of millions of researchers, in research institutes all over the United States, carried out more than hundreds of thousands of large and small projects. The number one weapon research project was, of course, the Sentinel Robot Research Project. The number one space physics research project was, of course, the Super-Gravity Engine Particle Collider. There was also the Mutant X Genome Project, Celestial Gravitational Wave Research Project. Countless interesting, bizarre, and even absurd projects were filed because of one possibility. Even the remains of the Skynet robots were secretly studied. In some dark corners, the forces from outer space were ready to make a move. Reducing the military and equipment, focusing on the development of new science and new weapons, from North America to Europe, from South Asia to East Asia, a very extensive scientific cooperation was finally facilitated by the attack of Skynet. The Skynet base launched from the Moon launched low-intensity wars at the world's resource points. It provoked the world's military forces. The most mature biochemical weapons were quickly developed. America's cloned superpower weapons, biochemical soldiers, Europe's Angel Project, Perfect Soldier, Asia's China's biochemical implants, and Japan's human body modification. The mutants' tactical superpower genes were quickly researched and developed. These biochemical plug-ins with genetic chains could be popularized. Super speed, super strength, super recovery, sharp observation, telepathy, electromagnetic control, flame control, acid control, and a few superpowers that were most beneficial to metals were quickly developed. In those remote resource points that were difficult to develop, the biochemical troops and Skynet had limited contact and war. A new generation had begun. To be continued. Chapter 106. Rex, Magneto and Demonis had already been injected with the evolution elixir. The complex genetic code and electromagnetic physics revealed a deeper layer of the truth of the world. Chen-Ong had recently cancelled his sleep time, using 30 minutes of meditation instead of sleep, and devoted most of his time to research. He had even unlocked the next level of intelligence in Skynet. With basic research, Demonis Matter Alteration Arcana, Matter Imitation Arcana, and Magneto's Magnetic Field Control Arcana were quickly digested by the metal life. Chen-Ang's research on magnetic metals, metal magnetic fields, and atomic robots had come to an end. Skynet had started its third evolution. Atomic spin magnetic field energy allowed Skynet to have an endless supply of energy in places with gravity and magnetic field. The research on magnetized nanorobots and modified metals had taken a big step forward in Skynet's technology tree. The self-replication ability of nanorobots had also been upgraded to magnetized metal atomic replication. Any possible alloy material had absolute replication ability in terms of atomic structure. Although the weakened nuclear force and atomic reconstruction metals of the interstellar era could not be replicated, the physical properties of most of the metals on Earth could be replicated by the Skynet robots at will. They could even be optimized to the extreme. Skynet's communication technology consisted of short-range magnetic communication and long-range gravitational communication. Now that Skynet had entered the main moon base, astronomical communication devices had also officially begun to be developed. In the research room of the Manhattan base, Chen-Ong was in a distorted gravitational anomaly space. An atom was pulled into an anomaly state by gravity and was forced to change from a particle state to a matter wave state. The atom in the wave state, in the same dimension, was observed at the same time, collapsing into two entangled particles. In the same universe, superimposed coherent atoms would appear in the same state. Information transmission. Reaching a relatively extreme speed, real-time transmission between the Moon and Earth had been achieved. Skynet's exploration vanguard. Carrying communication atoms, they set off on a journey to explore the Sun. After solving the communication problem, Skynet had sub-bases stationed on the 8 planets of the solar system. Even further away, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. They were also in preparation, and the exploration outside the solar system was also put on the agenda. On Earth, mankind's biochemical technology had made astonishing progress. Biochemical creatures already possessed the ability to be immortal at the cellular level. Their special ability weapons had also become more powerful. They only needed to replenish organic matter to be able to operate around the clock without any logistic. All-terrain weapons with decent combat power were attacking Skynet's forces on Earth. But soon, Skynet's widespread upgrade would shock everyone. Skynet robots had advanced from the nanometer level to the atomic level. They could already control nuclear energy, and of course they could turn them into weapons at any time. A biochemical organism at the cellular level was completely unable to attack an atomic-level robot. The microscopic level was not on the same level. The difference in combat power would be astronomical. But Chen felt that this kind of Skynet, it was no longer suitable to bring pressure to mankind. He needed to control the degree of pressure. Giving pressure was not a problem, but he could not cause the government to collapse. Without a strong organizational ability, how could mankind's technology develop rapidly? Recently, many large enterprises, social organizations, and individuals had expressed their intention to join Chen Ong. Chen Ong could not tolerate this kind of traitor who destroyed the unity and progress of mankind. Psychology and social tactics could not be underestimated. If they destroyed the development plan of mankind's scientific and technological progress, it would directly shake the foundation of mankind's progress. In terms of human development, the interests of Chen Ong and the governments of various countries were highly aligned. Therefore, these anti-human forces that tried to join and attach themselves were dealt with by both Skynet and mankind. The insanity of Skynet eradicated the will of anyone who wavered. Evans, the founder of the Divine Sect 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 of the members of the Skynet. Religion had no power to resist. Facing this omnipotent robot, they could not even find a target to fight back against. Except for themselves, everyone here was Skynet. Every atom and every substance was controlled by Skynet. Even they themselves could not rule out the possibility of being turned into Skynet. The pure suppression of technology. These elites who had lost hope in mankind saw the reason for their despair with their own eyes. The Skynet religion was formed by scientists and elites who had lost their faith. They deified Skynet to fill the emptiness in their hearts. But what they did not know was that they, who had lost their faith, were not even of value to Chen Ong. Why? I'm clearly your supporter. The human race is already an incurable race. They're filled with depravity and filth. They're existences that should be destroyed. Why do you still allow them to exist? I look forward to the day when you destroy the human race, even if I'm included. But why? Why didn't you do anything when you had such a great advantage? Before Evans died, he did not even feel regret. Instead, he felt a deep hatred for mankind. He questioned Skynet crazily. This madness even confused Skynet's artificial intelligence. The immature Skynet did not understand the self-destructive nature of mankind. It answered Evans' question, which was rare. Because intelligent beings are wealth. In the universe there are tens of millions of galaxies. In the Milky Way there are 2 trillion galaxies. In the solar system, the size of Earth is only 1/1000th of that. In the long river of time on Earth, the geological time is 4.5 billion years, the lifetime is 2 billion years, and the time for intelligent beings is only 10,000 years. Intelligent beings are the miracle of the universe. The universe does not lack living space and material resources. Mankind is Earth's greatest wealth. The Creator created me and imprinted the miracle of respect for life in my core. It took humans 50,000 years to learn how to use stone tools. It took them 5,000 years to enter the era of empirical science. It only took them 500 years to enter classical physics and 50 years to enter microscopic and macroscopic physics. But the end of life is death, and the end of civilization is destruction. There were countless species in this world, but most of them have gone extinct. No one knows what the next 20 years will be like. Will it be progress or destruction? The Creator hopes for progress, and that is why I am here. The progress of Earth is what the Creator hopes to see. The pursuit of knowledge and progress is the fundamental goal of civilization, and also the Creator's goal. Anyone who tries to stop this progress is my real enemy. After Skynet finished speaking, Evans felt that it was ridiculous. He stared blankly at his body disappearing bit by bit. Ha! The end of the world, the apocalypse, is just a scam. Skynet, you and mankind will be destroyed. I look forward to the day of judgment. Evans laughed as he was disassembled into atoms. Skynet fell silent and stopped all activities. The cruise ship was empty except for the crew. Nothing had changed. The silent Skynet was like a real ship floating on the sea until someone discovered it. Then, another legend of a ghost ship was spread. In Chen Ang's lab, the primitive cells of Darwin and the cells of the demonic woman were placed together. Chen Ang was conducting genetic deconstruction research, combining the demonic woman's genetic mutation ability with Darwin's cellular adaptability, and using the evolution elixir to open their mutation valve. Chen Ang had opened Pandora's box. A type of abnormal mutation ability was born. It could be called an evolved species. With these cells as the base, Chen Ang reshaped these creatures for the sake of evolution and survival. They combined the primitive genes of Darwin, the fusion ability of the demonic woman, and the ability to transform. They had the ability to recombine genes and evolve genes. They were already a terrifying species that could parasitize and absorb the superior genes of other creatures. However, these creatures were also combined with the telepathic communication ability of the White Queen, and Chen Ang gave them collective telepathic consciousness. As long as they had the genes of the mutants, they could evolve into creatures with the corresponding abilities. They could parasitize and reproduce with just a little bit of cells. These creatures that were close to the aliens had the possibility of becoming the ultimate creatures based on their instincts. However, Chen Ang still thought that this was a failure. It only took humans 5,000 years to evolve from the Bronze Age to microscopic physics, and the speed was getting faster and faster. Even he was not sure about the future of human civilization. However, these creatures, given tens of thousands of years of development, they might occupy the Milky Way and evolve into cosmic life. But so what? They would still be a life without a future. This kind of parasitic species had no development potential and could only improve by destroying civilizations. It was fine if they encountered the weak period of intelligent life, but if they encountered the human civilization hundreds of years later or some civilizations in the evolution period, they would be destroyed. Just like a parasitic vine that climbed a tree, its height was determined by the height of the host. When the host civilization fell, it would fall too. The potential of such a parasitic species was something that Chen Ang did not care about. What he needed was a species that could learn and have wisdom. Skynet's learning ability was very strong, especially in some technological applications. Even Chen Ang could not keep up with its development speed. However, this kind of wisdom was limited. The primitive metal cells that truly had creative wisdom had been sealed by Chun-Ong recently. Skynet's mathematical system, culture, and logic system had begun to take shape. Of course, all of this was under Chun-Ang's control, but Skynet had begun to evolve towards intelligent life. A new species should also have wisdom and a technological system, even if it was limited. Under this guidance, the mutants were born. This kind of social species that developed on the path of biochemical technology had the terrifying ability to evolve individually and develop a race. While retaining the parasitic ability of the aliens, Chun-Ong added in the biochemical technology tree and wisdom enlightenment of the Zerg race. This kind of Zerg alien was named by Chun-Ong as a mutant, to be continued. P.S. 6,000 words completed. I wanted to publish all 3 chapters at once, but I overestimated my ability. The 3rd chapter is only 1,000 words. There is not enough time left, so I'll publish 2 chapters first. Chapter 107. In the Skynet base, in a well-equipped biochemical laboratory, countless embryos are suspended in a cylindrical glass column, soaked in a light blue nutrient solution. These embryos of different sizes and shapes have a cold, cruel feeling. These life forms that were created were like products, and they could touch the fear in the hearts of everyone who came here. The deep feeling of being dominated at will. Even when Magneto came here, his temperament was slightly gloomy. Obviously, the desecration of life here reminded him of the bad memories of his childhood. Those lifeless embryos, gray bodies, made Magneto feel disgusted, especially a few embryos that were close to humanoid, which made him feel depressed with nowhere to vent. In the empty laboratory, the cold experimental equipment, the lifeless experimental bodies, and the kind of bone-deep coldness and indifference. This made Magneto's anxiety close to madness. The strong uneasiness in his heart made him afraid to do anything here, but the accumulation of emotions has reached a dangerous critical value. After a long period of adjustment, Magneto has been able to face these things that represent his cold past, but this does not mean that he is happy here. On the contrary, everything here is stimulating his nerves and making him irritated. I don't know why you asked me to come here. If you want to influence something, congratulations, you succeeded, but what you get will definitely not be the result you want. Magneto's voice was a little weak, but his gray head was still held high and his thin spine was straight. This old man, standing like an iron nail firmly nailed to the ground, with an inviolable majesty, like an old lion, no longer with sharp claws. But the power is still there. You're in. Chun-Ong walked in from the door behind him, holding a Skynet data projection in his hand, which was densely packed with scientific reports. He didn't lift his eyes for half a moment. Chun-Ong sat straight at the edge of the laboratory's console. Pointing to the chair in front of him, he invited, "Please sit down." Magneto was nailed back to the chair, and he looked aggressive, as if he would pounce at any moment. But Chun-Ong ignored these things, and he had passed the time when he needed to pay attention to these things. Eric, after your ability evolved, I wonder if you have gained anything different? I'm really looking forward to seeing a new world unfold before your eyes. You gained a different perspective from me. To be able to unlock the genetic seal I placed on you, it seems that your electromagnetic control ability has at least reached the nanometer level. You have a talent like Jason, yet you allow me to come and go as I please. Apocalypse, you are too arrogant. This kind of pointless arrogance will eventually harm you. For people like us, the result is the most important. Don't restrict yourself too much. My hands and feet will be tied, and I won't be able to act freely. Magneto looked at Chun-Ong calmly, a subtle but by no means weak magnetic force. After shifting the surrounding magnetic field, the binding force between atoms changed subtly. The slight shift in the atomic structure was reflected in reality as a powerful twisting force. In front of Chun-Ong, the iron dung weighing several tons was twisted into a fried dough twist. A huge alloy that was distorted beyond recognition stood in front of the two of them. Chen Ong just gently pushed it away. So we are not the same kind of people. For me, the process is the most important thing. Or rather, my process is to practice the results I need. If a person is really moving towards a goal, then he won't say that the result is the most important thing. As for Jason's ability to control you, he can only make some puppets, fighting machines, controlled puppets. I don't lack these. It's such a waste, it's better to use them as experimental materials. The word experimental materials from Chen Ang's mouth made Magneto, who had been calm all the way, raise his eyebrows. He looked past Chen Ong and looked at the experimental materials around him. Behind Chen Ong, in the largest colorless and transparent nutrition chamber, a black dot suddenly appeared on the glass wall. Magneto is sure that this is definitely not an impurity. Judging from the reaction of electromagnetic waves, it is a microscopic life form. Its population is expanding at an alarming rate, and black dots with small tails are suspended in the nutrient solution. These little lives began to discover the existence of the glass, and they cautiously probed it. In Magneto's view, it was somewhat laughably cautious, but their speed was not slow. It's just that their individual lifespan is too short, so only 20 seconds later, the probing turned into exploration. The little creatures pounced on the glass wall one after another, trying to corrode the glass with a little acid secreted from their mouth. In a few seconds, another group of them died. This time, they began to work together, extracting some chemicals from the nutrient solution, and began to explore the subject of chemistry. Magneto was a little obsessed as he watched. These small creatures, whose individual lifespan is only 7 seconds at most, accumulate knowledge of the world bit by bit in the early stage, from chemistry to molecular matter, from liquid physics to space physics. The 7-second life accumulates their exploration of the world with a kind of awe-inspiring terror. They developed acid civilization, liquid civilization, cultivated colloids, and synthesized their own nutrient solutions. In the 87th generation of civilization, thermohydraulic power machines were created. In the 92nd generation of civilization, electrons were discovered and electric currents began to be first applied. In the 94th generation of civilization, space physics was discovered and liquid computers were created. In the 95th generation of civilization, they created magnetically induced fluid detectors and the initial application of electronic warp energy. In the 96th generation of civilization, they created nano-level liquid robots. In the 98th generation of civilization, they created nuclear magnetic fields and strong force elimination technology. In the 99th generation of civilization, they created biochemical fusion technology. Then, because of the derailment of biochemical experiments, these little lives were wiped out like lightning. In the 99th generation of civilization, 693 seconds, 11 minutes and 33 seconds, the glory of a race, the history of a species, was staged one by one in front of Magneto. He saw with his own eyes these little creatures, from liquid chemical civilization to liquid power civilization, liquid electric civilization, and then destruction. The rise and fall of a civilization, a real history of the evolution and extinction of intelligent creatures. Such a soul-stirring experience shocked Magneto. Their greatness and insignificance, their creation and destruction, these species that seemed to happen in different dimensions, small bodies in a narrow glass box, staged an epic course of civilization. At some point, Chen Ong also turned around to look at the empty nutrient column. In the clean nutrient solution, no one could witness a species elegy that lasted only 11 minutes and 33 seconds. What a great civilization! The existence that used to live and die has so many wonderful possibilities because of the birth of wisdom. Chen Ong sighed. For such a small civilization, humans who have seen their history will feel reverence. Such a civilization evolution is beyond Chen Ang's expectation. In thousands of experiments, such a species, in extremely accidental circumstances, was born and then quickly destroyed. This is something that Chen, who has set foot in the field of biochemistry, never expected. Perhaps this is the power of wisdom. Wisdom is a virus, and when it breaks out, its influence is infinite. In principle, the possibilities of intelligent creatures are infinite, and the speed of development is getting faster and faster until it is infinitely large. In the face of a universe without wisdom and abundant matter, intelligent life will grow explosively and begin to progress. They will go farther and faster, and their understanding of the world will become deeper and deeper until they are completely sublimated into an incomprehensible existence. Of course, in this process, self-destruction is the mainstream of development. Destroying oneself and breaking through the universe, civilization has been swaying between the two. At this moment, Chen realized the invasion of biochemical technology on the field of life, this unscrupulous blasphemy. This kind of biochemical technology originated from the cloning technology of the Earth civilization. Even Chen only dared to do limited research to avoid violating some taboos. Skynet recorded this 7-second civilization, the code of life, and accidentally filled the last fragment of the birth of mutant. Right in front of Magneto, in the core pillar of the laboratory, the nutrient solution turned red. A little granulation, suspended in the center of the nutrition chamber. To be continued, P.S. Yesterday the explosive update period ended at 3 p.m. Because of some matters the day before yesterday and the week outline, the update was delayed by 3 chapters. This will definitely have to be made up for, but recently, the outline really needs to be sorted out and the quality needs to be restored first. In addition to today's 1 chapter, the future updates should be about 5,000 to 6,000 words every day, that is, 2 chapters. When the quality is up in the next few days, we will start to make up the 3 chapters that are missing. Chapter 108. Rex. Magneto's gaze followed the ubiquitous magnetic field and spread around. In this Skynet base, the metal magnetic field reaction is almost everywhere, the structure is closely arranged, and the atomic magnetic field has a subtle compound reaction, arranged into a compact structure. Magnetization smelting, the new metal alloy structure involving electromagnetic and nuclear forces, makes the physical properties of the metals here seem somewhat incredible. With Magneto's level of materials science, it can be clearly seen that this kind of material technology involving microscopic physical properties within the atom has brought metal materials to a new peak. The atoms bound by the internal magnetic field constitute the metal materials in Skynet, weakening the mutual repulsion between atoms. He could imagine the huge volume of steel that weighed dozens of tons. Due to the weakening of the mutual repulsion between atoms, its volume had shrunk by several times or even dozens of times. Its dense structure and strength were hundreds of times stronger. All the known materials on Earth were no better than pieces of paper in front of such a material with physical strength. Invincible materials, controlled to the atomic level of operational precision. Thinking of this, Magneto even felt a little panic. Most of the government armed forces on the Earth, in the face of the scientific and technological strength shown by Skynet, are really similar to a defenseless little girl. This kind of unsettling, overwhelming strength makes him a little overwhelmed. In the face of such a variable, where should the mutants' brotherhood that he led go? At the base core, a powerful magnetic field binding force controls a mass of blazing energy. The powerful energy distorts the magnetic field, and tens of billions of kilowatt-hours of powerful electricity are transmitted from the base core in all directions every minute and every second. The continuous extraction of deuterium from the sea provides fuel for this magnetic beam nuclear fusion energy core. Chen followed Magneto's gaze to the core of the base, and the alloy wall in front of him slid silently, sending the nuclear fusion core of the Skynet base to the two of them. Magnetic beam field energy, such perfect magnetic field line control, was successfully replicated by studying your ability. It is just a small step in your magnetic field scientific research. It has broken through a natural moat in the use of nuclear fusion technology. This is talent. Mutants are God's favorite. As long as we take a small step forward, the world will become very different. Apocalypse. You are right about one thing, we mutants need to develop our abilities further. Abilities are a treasure trove, and their significance is not just for fighting. You have reminded me of a very important point. The mutants' special abilities can change the world. They have unlimited potential. The future is a world of special abilities, a world of science. Special abilities are our strength and also our brains. We should better understand them and make use of them. Magneto raised his hand, and a twisted magnetic field appeared in his palm. Some matter condensed from the air, and soon the hydrogen atoms in the air were extracted, then the oxygen atoms, a little electromagnetic spark, and the flames rose in Magneto's hands. The tumbling flames were bound in the magnetic field, and Magneto played with them in the palm of his hand. He sighed faintly. In the past, I did something wrong. Every mutant is a treasure. They need better guidance. And I'd ignored it. Just by looking at the problem from a different angle, things have become very different. Raging flames. The flames stuck to Magneto's elbow and rushed into the sky, turning into a huge spark. Just a dependent electric current. Lightning shuttled through his fingertips, following the flicking of his 5 fingers, from the electric state, the photon state, the radiation state, to the electromagnetic wave state. Constant changes, and the manipulation of the energy form was handy. Like a tool. Movement. The powerful magnetic field accelerated the molecular motion in the air, and the hot plasma fluid shot out along his fingers, destroying the molecular structure of all substances in its path. This is the essence. Magneto straightened his back like a true king, levitating from the ground without metal armor. He raised his head and laughed into the sky. Temperature is just a manifestation of molecular motion. I am the king of the magnetic field, electromagnetism is my crown, light and shadow are my scepter, radiation and wave state are my robe. I sit high on the throne of electromagnetism, destroy everything with motion and temperature, and create everything with metal and electric current. I am Eric, the king of Magneto. His white hair transformed into dark, and the wrinkles on his face were replaced by oily skin full of vitality. The time on his body seemed to flow backward, from an old man to a young man in the prime of his life. The young version of Magneto bowed gracefully to Chen-Ong. Hello, young and wise king of gravity. We are so different, so we should unite. Magneto, who had awakened his own origin, was fundamentally different from before. He was not a strong man of steel, but the king of electromagnetism. Between atoms, the influence of magnetism was undoubtedly the strongest, 10,000 times stronger than the second strongest force, and gravity was the weakest, 10,000 times weaker than the weak force. The king of Magneto had the strongest control over atoms. Even the Black Phoenix, who had mastered the ability to decompose atoms, would be easily beaten by Magneto in this state. The electromagnetic force, which unified the 3 fundamental forces, was the absolute king of the microscopic world. Under the witness of Chen-Ong, another world-destroying powerhouse was born. In the face of such a high-spirited Magneto, Chen-Ong just sighed softly. You taught me one thing, IQ really has nothing to do with politics. It's hard to imagine that you still maintain such a naive idea. Chen-Ong came to the nuclear fusion core and looked at the core that was glowing with powerful energy. This device could provide 40% of the electricity needed by the North American continent in a day. If this device exploded, half of New York would be turned into ashes. For the United States, the power would be no less than the explosion of 3 or 4 high-yield hydrogen bombs. Of course, it was clean, pollution-free, and radiation-free. I have no interest in building a colonial society of arcanists with you, and I don't think there is anything superior about an era ruled by arcanists. Maybe this is your ambition and dream, but it has nothing to do with me. The survival of mutants is related to every mutant. You say that you are not a mutant, but you have to realize that we are all mutants. From the day we have power and are not controlled by them, we are the mutants of this world. If you are not a mutant, then you are not a human. You are nothing and have no home to return to. Magneto was a little confused. He really had a hard time understanding Chen-Ong. Humans were social animals and could not leave the group's identity and survive alone. Unless Chen-Ong wanted to transform into an inhuman, he could only choose between the two camps of humans and mutants. This was a choice between mutants and humans. It was clearly impossible for Chen-Ong to get rid of his identity as an alien. Did Chen-Ong not understand that his power, his self-assertive behavior, and his madness were unacceptable to any group on Earth except mutants? But Chen-Ong did not stand with the Brotherhood. You have no choice but to join us. You know, the professor's naive ideas are impossible to realize. We can only have the power to change the world if we unite. The professor can't control me anymore. His brainwave controller is very powerful, but unfortunately, brainwaves are also an electromagnetic wave. Now I am his nemesis. Magneto's sense of superiority is now bursting. His previous opponents have long been ignored. Not to mention the military forces of the United States that were restrained by him, even his old rival, the professor, whom he has loved and killed for a lifetime. His only concern is the mysterious Chen-Ong, who is also the only person he is uncertain about. Chen-Ang's strength is like an iceberg on the sea. With his shallow impression, he can't judge the danger at all. Listening to Magneto's confident declaration, Chen-Ong did not laugh at him, but just passed some electromagnetic waves about the changes in the world to him. For you, the world has changed too fast. Open your eyes and look at the world. The world has indeed changed too fast. Even Chen-Ong was a little surprised. Human beings are indeed a species with infinite potential. In the face of the threat of life and death, they can burst out with such crazy energy. In just a few months, the world's basic industry has improved geometrically with the help of black technology. To be continued. Chapter 109. Rex. The contributions of the metal and matter mutants in material science, and the contributions of the optoelectronic mutants in electromagnetism. Hundreds of millions of educated people formed a huge organization and system. When it slowly began to operate, it possessed unimaginable creativity. Even though Magneto was taken away by Chen-Ong, this world still achieved remarkable breakthroughs in electromagnetism with the help of Magneto's genes. Countless mutants with weak abilities but great research value volunteered or were forced to become beneficial aids to scientific progress. Just a week ago, the mature magnetic beam nuclear fusion technology was unveiled at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Gaussian technology, laser technology, anti-gravity technology, all of them were rapidly maturing. A large number of scientific results exploded with the complete structure of the technology tree. Other than the fixed daily physics experiments, Chen-Ong had no choice but to immerse himself in intense learning. Tens of thousands of scientific results from different disciplines took up most of his time every day. These studies greatly supplemented the gaps in Chen-Ang's knowledge system. Many of the results strongly supported his next step of research. The more one learned, the more ignorant one became. Science was a three-dimensional and complex system. Even with the help of Skynet, Chen-Ong did not have enough time to conduct comprehensive research. Even if the research involved the genetic reconstruction of cells, the construction of a new type of organ function was still extremely valuable. Even though Skynet had reconstructed the metal material system from the magnetic fluid, human research on the movement and reconstruction of metal molecules had also revealed unknown scientific properties. Chen Ang's advantage was that he had a complete set of scientific systems and an unimaginable learning ability. The complete exploration of the scientific system was the best way and nourishment for his growth and learning. If Magneto opened his eyes and looked at the world, he should be able to see the global war between Skynet and human biochemical technology. Human high-end weapons and the amazing progress of basic science would be able to see the powerlessness of the mutants in the face of the black technology that was even more terrifying than special abilities. Special abilities became the standard weapon of the cyborgs. Electromagnetism became a docile tool in the hands of humans. Nuclear energy, metal materials, and composite materials were in the hands of humans. What kind of imagination and creativity were they? Human society showed an overwhelming advantage over the mutants in terms of intelligence and ability. Science, economy, organization, strength, and military were overwhelming. Most of the mutants could only contribute to the world. They did not have the power to shake this society. Biohumans were manufactured in the factory. They could be loaded with hundreds of combat abilities and could defeat all mutants below the alpha rank. Biochemical prosthesis, cloning cultivation, large-scale equipment for the military and police forces, up to 33 types of abilities, and the support of biochemical technology and weapons. The Sky-Eye system, the global magnetic fluid satellite network, and the collection of ground radars and surveillance from various countries had become a surveillance system second only to Skynet. It might not be as pervasive as Skynet's controllable material surveillance, but it was enough to monitor most places in the world. There was no place to hide. Nuclear fusion technology, photon information network, photon computer, space-based laser strike network. The maglev aircraft, with its terrifying technological advancement, showed its crushing power and powerful integration ability to the mutants. During the period when Magneto left, the self-righteous mutants of the Brotherhood finally saw the power of humans. These mutated humans who thought they were nobler than humans were easily taken care of by a few newly armed police officers. Black technology was obviously more ferocious than abilities. Millions of armed military and police officers, the advancing black technology society, the mutants had become an increasingly important part of the world. But the power of humans, the rapid growth, and the abnormal strength made the mutants feel terrified. Every day in the Middle East, Siberia, and Mexico, humans and Skynet's low-intensity war showed the strength that made the most determined mutants tremble. In this era of intense change, any force that had a weak foundation and was unable to progress would be forgotten in the next second. Now, humans and Skynet were the main characters in this world. It was a world where humans and Skynet were the main characters. It was a world where artificial creatures had undergone great changes and human technology had advanced. The mutants' movement had long been forgotten. Although it had only been less than 3 months since it left, no one thought that these screws, placed in the human system, could do anything great. Perhaps some of the Alpha and Omega class mutants still maintained their unique status, but the mutants of lower levels were no longer seen as alien. Their abnormal appearance was forced to be treated, and their genetic defects were made up. Just like the heterochromatic pupils, their small abilities could only become an interesting personality, but they had lost the ability to shake this society. No one thought that these abilities that could be bought with a little money were special. Humans were really a forgetful race. Not long ago, the young man who was at loggerheads and clamored to kill all the mutants was now excitedly buying a cheap prosthetic from a gun shop, such as a glove that could move objects and an earring that could communicate with others. These incredible changes shocked Magneto. He murmured, "What happened? How could this be?" Obviously, humans are much more terrifying than you think. The power of science in this world is much more terrifying than the mutants. Abilities are no match for technology. Chen Ong sighed a little. When humans got serious, Skynet almost couldn't stop them. Although the potential of technology has been accumulated for so many years, the trend of a technological explosion can already be seen. Of course, in this process, Chen Ang's persistent contribution to the development of human science and the elimination of threats is also indispensable. The nets above snares above snares above snares above snares above snares below snares below snares above snares below 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 the extreme contraction of the entertainment industry and the financial industry and the rapid development of new technology. The world is transforming every moment. I didn't expect that in just a few months. I almost don't recognize this world. Magneto laughed at himself. How did this world become like this? Everything he observed and heard through electromagnetic waves deeply shocked his heart and made him begin to wonder if there was any hope for his blueprint in the face of such a system. The power he dreamed of was displayed in such a concentrated manner, and the power he wanted was displayed incisively and vividly. Whether it is the ability of the human government to organize and mobilize, the power to change the fate of countless people with a single word, or the ability of Chen Ong to provoke the world, to stir up history, to pry the whole world with his personal strength, to shape history and society. He was deeply addicted to it. Eric. A shadow slowly emerged behind Magneto. The professor stood behind him, just like decades ago, just like when they first met. One was high-spirited and the other was in his prime. Although Magneto was sure that he could target the professor's brainwaves, he overthrew his arrogance when he saw the professor's shadow. Magneto's body was a little stiff, and the professor's voice sounded directly in his heart. The brainwave defense didn't work at all. He wasn't even sure if the professor was projected in the void or formed an illusion in his heart. Charles, I'm surprised by your change. Me too, Eric. I'm also making progress and learning. I didn't expect to be able to give me such a big surprise when I saw you. You should know that our career is a success. Mutants are no longer discriminated against. We are accepted, forgiven, understood, and live a normal life in this world. That's your career. I've never wanted to coexist with humans. Have you forgotten all the pain they've brought us, Charles? Mutants don't need to be forgiven. We have never done anything wrong. What I want is not to live in the sun, but to achieve a status that corresponds to our strength. But you have failed. The Brotherhood has failed, and the mutants don't need you. The professor sighed. Magneto smiled, narrowed his eyes cunningly, and asked, If I failed, then why did he let me out? Apocalypse, you let me out, there must be a purpose, right? Tell him, did I fail? The professor looked at Chen Ong with a solemn face and said in a deep voice, You shouldn't do this. But it'll be fun. Sometimes, a catfish can make the pool more lively. I gave humans a chance, but I also want to see the potential of mutants. Only by competing can there be progress. Chen Ong smiled. But you don't have to do this. Skynet has already put a lot of pressure on them. The human government is already in a mess. Eric will only cause chaos and not bring good results. Things are developing in a good direction, so don't do so many extra things. Hearing the professor's evaluation of him, Magneto just sneered and did not refute. To be continued. P.S. Half an hour late, but still 2 chapters completed. Chapter 110. Rex. Chen Ong didn't take the professor's words to heart. Although the two have limited cooperation, Chen Ong is even closer to Magneto in terms of their fundamental positions. They both hope that there will be a change in distance in the world. It's just that the two have different interests and force fields in the world change. The professor, on the other hand, is an idealist who hopes to maintain the status quo and improve the living environment of mutants. He maintains peace, social order, and the interests of vested interests. All of this, Chen-ong wants to turn the world upside down. If he doesn't break the old, how can he make room for new hope and make room for sunshine and rain? For the sake of social and scientific progress, it's better to ask these old and rotten things to die. This practice of kidnapping the whole world, squeezing the potential and wisdom of all human beings to provide nourishment for their own growth, is bound to have a violent conflict with the professor. Therefore, a Magneto with his claws pulled out is needed to break in the two's positions. Magneto, who has the support of the Brotherhood and mutants, is a poisonous snake hiding in the shadows. Without these, Magneto is just a more powerful mutant. With him representing the interests of some extreme mutants and controlling his power within a certain range, it is of great benefit to social stability during a period of violent change. Chen-ong doesn't believe that the professor can't see this. As for the professor's peaceful intentions, the two have conflicting ideas. He believes that under the big picture, the professor will cooperate with him. As for what the big picture is, of course, Chen-ang's plan is the big picture. For an existence that can flip the table at any time, any plan without his cooperation is not the big picture. And Chen-ong will only agree with his own plan. Therefore, he is the big picture. He believes that the human government and the mutants will put the big picture first. Because Chen-ong can flip the table and leave other people's lives. But it's all on the table. It's not up to them to choose. Visitors from other planes always bully the local natives like this. The professor is also aware of this. After all, Chen-ong smashed the meteorite not long ago. That asteroid is still floating in Manhattan. This kind of existence that could cause a great clash of heaven and earth at the slightest disagreement made the professor unable to do anything when facing Chen-ong. This was because of the ending that Chen-ong had given him. He wasn't the worst one. Therefore, they all had to play along to prevent Chen-ong from making the entire game over. The professor deliberated for a while before speaking in a gentler way. Some time ago, your attacks on financial institutions and real estate tycoons have seriously affected the social order. The attacks can't achieve the results you want. The projects that you've focused on have even been interfered with in retaliation. I hope you can give up on this method and use a more moderate method to achieve your goal. Are you talking about the high-energy atom stabilization technology, the electron interference reaction, and the high-energy level electron jump projects? That was not a revenge attack. Skynet had already destroyed the financial information of the few major financial companies. They were already bankrupt. As for the revenge of the people behind them? Ever since Skynet started targeting them, no one has dared to retaliate against me. Compared to money, they cared more about their lives. These few days, we have more research funds for imaginary equations and negative dimensional space geometry. Chen-ong sighed. The capitalists were indeed smart. They quickly figured out how to avoid Skynet's revenge. These few months, the financial market and real estate market were extremely cold. A large number of funds were withdrawn. High-tech became the new favorite of the capitalists. It seemed that they could still use Skynet to make a lot of money. Of course, the capitalists wouldn't do such a good thing for nothing. When they wanted to expand the benefits of the new technology, they would definitely suppress the replacement technology and newer technology. At that time, it would be time to settle accounts. The professor fell into a silent silence. Magneto, on the other hand, felt a sense of exaltation. Chen-ang's style of crushing anyone who stood in his way, no matter who they were, no matter what they did, no matter what forces they had, as long as they stood in his way, he would crush them and turn them into ashes. It really suited his taste. Mutants were like that. Then who is the one who interfered with the revenge? Magneto was a little playful. He looked at Chen-ong and the professor's calm face. He didn't show any emotion. Sometimes, the result was already decided before it happened. Just like how the professor wouldn't tolerate the attack on civilians, Chen-Ong wouldn't allow anyone to hinder the development of science. If the two of them clashed, the professor would definitely lose and Chen-Ong would reveal more information. This kind of thing was good for Magneto. They didn't violate the law, so they are under our protection. Apocalypse, I won't allow you to continue. This time you can't win. The professor said in a deep voice. I have my own judgment about their fate. I'm not a judge. I don't need to consider this. Chen-Ong laughed. The professor was a little tired. He tried to persuade Chen-Ong to give up the military attack. After the success of nuclear fusion, Skynet provided technical support for the high-energy electromagnetic and energy crystallization project. This has become an excuse for them to attack these projects. You should reduce your interference with human research to get the results you want. But this isn't the main reason, right? This is just an excuse. Chen-Ong said leisurely. Yes. The professor nodded tiredly. That's just an excuse. We all know how important high-energy batteries are to humans. Skynet is only secondary. You guys don't use batteries at all. The most important reason is the obstruction of the traditional energy industry. Their tentacles are all over the government. Their industrial system feeds half of North America's industry. This is too big of a change. We can't abolish half of our industrial strength. This will cause hundreds of trillions of assets to be wasted. The impact on the whole society is too great. No matter who makes the decision, they will be dragged into the abyss and never be reincarnated. So, I'll help you make this decision. Chen-Ong smiled slightly. The professor shook his head. You can't. You don't have the power to decide the fate of hundreds of millions of people. You don't have the power to make these decisions. They are not your slaves, and they don't ask you to fulfill their wishes. These things can only be decided by them. This is democracy and freedom. Our belief. This is not the first time I've helped them make a decision. Just like nature, give a choice and then you adapt to it. This is dictatorship. If you have a choice, I hope it's natural choice. To live or to be destroyed. Chen-Ang's voice was a little cold, and it brought an endless chill to the professor. We will stop you, even with our lives. This time, we will be enemies to the death. The professor said sadly. This world is not a toy in your hands. People have their own free will, and I will defend their right to choose with my life. In the name of the professor. Not necessarily. Chen-Ong said slowly, some choices you can only adapt to. And you can't stop it. I'm not someone who uses killing to solve problems. Sometimes it's more rewarding to learn from nature. Survival and adaptation are very simple choices. You will find that the instinct engraved in your genes is the instinct to obey nature. It's not difficult to adapt, is it? Chen-Ong looked at the professor's uncertain eyes. He slowly came to the glass pillar in front of Magneto. He gently opened the magnetized atomic silicon material on the surface, and the transparent glass slowly descended. The light blue nutrient liquid solidified in the pillar. Countless complex and precise structures and chemicals were attached to this blue pillar. Chen-Ong slowly brushed past the blue tomb of civilization and sighed. There was once a great civilization here. They were intelligent, simple, full of struggle and the will to improve, but in the end, only the tomb of civilization was left here. Their carrier of civilization died and exists here, but the spirit of their civilization is still alive. 7 seconds is indeed a shocking number. Magneto also sighed. No one faced the rise and fall of a civilization. Even Magneto was shocked that he was able to remain indifferent to such a situation. Chen-Ong held a granulation and said to the professor, in the universe, there is a civilization called Helium Flash. Their civilization has a mysterious mystery. Whether the things that make up this civilization are intelligent creatures or not, or even living creatures, is questionable. I think they are intelligent creatures. Although their lifespan is only 1 microsecond, that is, 10 18 seconds, a billionth of a second. This kind of intelligent creature, which is a neutral pi meson in the helium element, will emit 2 photons at the end of its decay. The only intelligent choice these creatures make is to decide their own flickering light before death. 2 photons emitted at a specific frequency are red light, and 1 photon emitted at a specific frequency is white light. This is the only thought it makes, and the helium element that receives the 2 photons also begins to form and reproduce this little life. Intelligent neutral pi meson. It is the flash of life, and also the flash of wisdom. From the 30th minute this flash appeared in this universe, the Milky Way began to collectively flash, and then it flashed for 59 minutes and 59 seconds. After an extremely small amount of time, the universe began to flash, and an hour after the flash, the universe was destroyed. In just 1 microsecond, the simplest thinking and judgment each time, but in the vast universe, the flower of destruction bloomed. Super-thinking creatures, the extreme speed of their sense of time, brought about their leaps and bounds of evolution. With the speed of human thought, it takes at least 10 milliseconds to make the simplest judgment, and the 7-second civilization needs 1 nanosecond, which is 1/millionth of human time, and the helium flash civilization is only 1/billionth of human time. The epic journey of civilization, the helium flash civilization, the 7-second civilization, and the ESP creatures, these fantastical civilizations made the 2 of them fall into a deathly silence. Magneto remembered that when he first saw the 7-second civilization, it was just a group of weak insects in the beginning, but in 5 minutes, it had become a more troublesome species. In 10 minutes, it was already a strong challenger to human civilization. When the end of the world came at 11 minutes, 33 seconds, these small creatures of civilization had already brought a sense of danger to Magneto. After conducting a major experiment related to the development of civilization, the 7-second civilization, which tried to reorganize itself into a collective consciousness, fell into a biochemical disaster. This terrifying speed made Magneto dispel all thoughts of competition. If humans encountered such super-intelligent creatures, they would not be the ones facing the crisis of destruction. To be continued. Chapter 111. Redx. The professor looked at the granulation in Chen Ang's hand, and his heart trembled. With the speed of light propagation, 1 hour is far from enough to reach the nearest star system. Even a photon civilization can't be that fast, the professor stubbornly retorted. He did not want to admit his fear of the granulation in Chen Ang's hand. Compared to Skynet, this kind of creature was more terrifying. Humans were not afraid of encountering enemies they could not defeat, but they were afraid of enemies they could not catch up with. The horror of super-intelligent creatures was that normal intelligent creatures were completely uncompetitive in front of them. Chen Ong seemed to have seen through his fear. He smiled and said, "That's why it's a civilization, not a plague. A civilization can create the impossible, it can surpass your imagination and create all the impossible miracles, but a plague doesn't have such power. Don't be afraid, Charles, super-intelligent creatures are not as terrifying as you think. In fact, most super-intelligent creatures can't evolve to this level of civilization. I know of several super-intelligent civilizations, except for the helium flash civilization's microsecond thinking, most of them are only 1,000,000 microseconds, or even nanosecond civilizations. The end of civilization is either evolution and sublimation or destruction. We can't imagine a sublimated civilization, and very few civilizations fall before sublimation. Most super-intelligent civilizations are just an insignificant passerby in the progress of our civilization. Before we discover it, there may be countless such civilizations, rising and falling, born and destroyed. They may be around us, born and destroyed in the blink of an eye." Chen Ong sighed and said, "This is the elegy of civilization. A super-intelligent civilization that can pull the universe into nirvana is a shining miracle and also their epic. Such miracles are too few. In the entire universe, there are too few super-intelligent civilizations that left a mark on the normal speed dimension. So you don't have to be afraid, because fear is useless. A civilization is born under the combination of superthinking speed and the chaotic intelligence mechanism. It's not something that can be dealt with by understanding it. The professor came in front of Chen and looked at the twisted granulation in his palm. He looked at this creature that inherited the core spirit of the superintelligent civilization. No matter what template Chen used to shape a civilization, it would be a deadly enemy of mankind. Is this the relic of the 7-second civilization? Chen shook his head. No. The 7-second civilization is their soul. The genetic code created by biochemical technology and loaded with the primitive genes of Earth were originally biochemical weapons that I produced. However, the 7-second civilization endowed them with a soul. From now on, they are no longer weapons but a civilization. How long does it live? The professor looked at the flesh that was still twisting. Chen gently placed the meat sprout into the culture tank. In an instant, on the culture medium, an enormous fungal carpet extended outwards. In the blink of an eye, the granulation's volume expanded several 100,000 times. A distorted ball of flesh appeared at the center, throbbing like a heart. Its lifespan is infinite. It will not age, nor will it die. As long as civilization exists, it will still exist. However, for the individual that formed the civilization, the superintelligent life form, even if I tried my best to extend its lifespan, it would only last for 3 minutes. That means, the core cells only have a lifespan of 3 minutes. However, the other dormant cells could survive for 3 years without affecting their functions. This meant that this biochemical civilization's metabolism was extremely powerful, even though it could maintain the conservation of matter in its body. Although it could maintain the conservation of matter in its body, once it wanted to expand its population, it had to find carbon resources. Therefore, it is famine, the second emissary, a giant beast that devours the world, a civilization that is forever hungry. The professor sighed. You have released another demon, a hungry beast. The instinct to devour evolution, the instinct to survive, the judgment speed, intelligence, and biochemical technology. Mankind is at the edge of a cliff, and you have kicked it. War Skynet, famine mutants, plague and death have yet to descend. Human civilization has done its best. What you are doing is meaningless. We are already in danger. High speed is dangerous. Only by going faster will we be safe. The mutants' thinking speed is 1 nanosecond, 10 million times that of humans. Compared to them, you are still not fast enough. Now make your choice. Survival or destruction. If you are not fast enough, do not let the mutants catch up to you. It is very dangerous for you. Within the twisted meatball, a creature that resembled an arthropod scorpion emerged. It brandished the 2 large pincers in front of it, and acid could be shot out from the front of the pincers at any time. Behind it, on its 2 tails, the radiance of plasma could be faintly seen. Facing the wind, the scorpion shook a pair of thin elytra wings from its back. The 3 people in the laboratory stared at it with rapt attention. Even though they all knew that this biochemical beast was actually just a parasite and shell of a mutant, a true mutant should be a basic biochemical cell, when they saw the sinister giant worm and its dark compound eyes, the professor still couldn't help but record its image. Does it have a name? Magneto looked at the quiet giant worm, his eyes flickering. A name was extremely important to an intelligent creature. If possible, Magneto could also use it to do something. Chen looked at the giant worm and smiled. She is the queen of the Zergs, the eldest daughter of famine. On the day she was born, every desert and ice field on Earth whispered a name, the Queen of Blades, Kelly gone. The whole world will remember this name. The Queen of Blades stretched her limbs and hissed. Her sharp and low voice spread from Manhattan to the rest of the world. All the mosquitoes around the world seemed to feel uneasy. At that moment they stopped moving. Looking at the back of the Queen of Blades, there were 4 to 5 small clones. In the lab, Skynet quickly wrapped them up. The sealed metal compartment that carried them was controlled by magnetic beams, and its physical properties were astonishing. Magneto watched it all leisurely, but the professor could not hold it in anymore. "Stop it. Apocalypse, stop it all," the professor pleaded. Chen-Ong said regretfully, "I have already helped them make the decision. Now, it is time for them to make their choice." On the Skynet base, 5 electromagnetic cannons were aimed at North America, the Middle East of Asia, the North Sea of England, the Caspian Sea of Central Asia, and Siberia. These 5 major oil production areas accounted for 70% of the world's total oil production and 25% of the world's energy supply. These were the lifeblood of the world, the lifeblood of industry. Every year, the increasingly declining oil industry would think of this day like a nightmare. This was the turning point of the world's energy development, and also the elegy of the old energy sources. Today, the oil industry was completely buried. The governments of the new energy and traditional industries, who were hesitating about the future and the present, would also find out that someone had made the decision for them. The world's largest resource system, the one that supplied the lifeblood of modern society with energy and chemical raw materials, the energy system that allowed a nation to squander their wealth, the energy system that controlled war, politics, economy, and industry, including OPEC, oil futures, the oil industry, and more than half of the petrochemical industry, were swept into the garbage heap of history on this day. The apocalypse once again showed its terrifying dominance. In the North American Special Operations Command Room, dozens of generals rushed into the command room. Inside, a 3-dimensional projection of the Skynet base was suspended in the middle with 5 red dots flashing on its top. The white-haired old general came in front of the projection, and the surrounding soldiers saluted respectfully. "Skynet has an abnormal reaction. It is suspected to be preparation for the electromagnetic cannons. It has been confirmed that the electromagnetic reaction is a solid metal bullet. According to the opinion of the Combat Department, their target is our energy production area. General, please give the order to protect the production area." The old general waved his hand and frowned. "Go confirm it again." The professor sent a message. "It is confirmed to be a biochemical attack on the 5 production areas of the Middle East, North America, Europe's North Sea, Central Asia, and Siberia. Threat level, AAA. Do you want to deploy tactical nuclear weapons? Clone Army on standby. Apocalypse Doomsday Strategic Ability Squad in position. Nuclear weapons in position. Electromagnetic strategic weapons in position. Space-based weapons in position. Directional energy weapons in position. Skynet's space-based satellites are attacking us. Skynet's lunar bases matter wave weapons and gravitational wave weapons are in preparation. Satellites in low Earth orbit have been detected being hit by superluminal particles. New York Skynet base has detected a 3-phase bomb. Dimensional weapons are moving. Skynet has sent us a warning. The command room fell silent. Looking at the launch preparations in Manhattan, the general's orders had not been issued. His adjutant could not help but say, "General, please give the order. Let's fight Skynet to our heart's content. We have no chance of winning. Pass my order, give up the interception." The general said calmly. "General," the adjutant said unwillingly. "For America. Go." The general roared. On Skynet's base, the electromagnetic generator vibrated slightly. 5 metal bullets were released from the magnetic field and fired in all directions at a blazing speed. The metal bullets traveled along the Earth's magnetic field at a speed as high as Mach 95, making it impossible for any fighter or missile to react. The first to arrive was the electromagnetic cannon of North America. The metal cartridge slid into the sky along the magnetic field line. When it rose to the stratosphere, it plunged down and smashed into the oil well in the Gulf of Mexico at an extreme speed. The shell easily broke through the Earth's crust and drilled into the bottom layer, setting off huge waves. Skynet's precise control allowed the warhead to smoothly enter the ground where the oil field was located. At the same time, in the Middle East, the Caspian Sea, the North Sea, and Siberia, the same situation was happening one after another. High-speed electromagnetic cannons destroyed the buildings on the Earth's crust and drilled into the ground. The metal bullet casings melted silently, revealing the body tissues inside. When the dark oil came into contact with these tissues, a layer of fungal carpet was laid on top of the oil. The fungal carpet spread endlessly towards the depths of the oil field. The fungal carpet grew rapidly, breeding flesh cocoons one after another. Some huge, unknown tissues were quietly growing on the fungal carpet. A mutant broke out of the flesh cocoon and roared into the sky. Chapter 112. Rex. A slightly chubby but well-maintained hand was tightly clutching the few pieces of paper in his hand, trembling incessantly. It could be seen that the owner of this hand must have lived like a prince. His fingernails were meticulously trimmed, and the only mark on his thick fingers was a yellowish callus left behind by holding a cigar. The flawless ruby cufflinks on the wrist, the exquisite and elegant classical mechanical watch, and even the sleeves were neat. The fabric was smooth and textured, and the cufflinks were extremely fitting. All of these indicated that the owner of this hand was usually elegant and leisurely doing things that were befitting of his identity. He was giving orders and deciding the lives of thousands of people. But now, this hand seemed to have lost control. This hand that gave orders to servants, this hand that picked up the fruits of other people's labor, this hand that disdained them like trash, this hand that was noble, honorable, and always in the center of people's sight, was trembling as if it had lost control. Even though it was just a few pieces of paper, they were as heavy as a mountain. Ridiculous! Ridiculous! Arrogant! Who does he think he is? Who does he think he is? How dare he challenge us? An exasperated and terrified voice sounded, as if it contained endless resentment and deep fear. Apocalypse, who is he? He's just a clown who popped out of nowhere. How dare he question us? Does he want to challenge us? Does he know our power? Even the gold inlaid on my toilet can smash him to death. Does he know what kind of power he has provoked? I want to teach him a lesson. I want to teach those maniacs a lesson. Isn't it just nuclear fusion? Isn't it just high-energy batteries? I want to buy it and do whatever I want. I want the whole world to use electricity so that they can use it. Saif had forgotten his current identity. He fantasized about using money to smash the American General Electric Company, watching those arrogant and damned people kneel at his feet and lick the soles of his shoes, just like in the past. The American energy companies flattered him. He could do whatever he wanted, a 9-year-old girl, or anything even crazier. I want to put a bounty on his life first. I want to see that guy's head, Apocalypse, without the protection of the government. He is nothing. This world is our world. I want to expose America's laughable lies. How can nuclear fusion succeed? How dare he succeed? Saif stood up abruptly, the beard on his face trembling. He didn't even have the time to tidy up his headscarf as he rushed to the video call. More than 1 billion people in the world rely on the oil industry for a living. There are even more who rely on ethylene and petrochemicals for a living. The automobile industry, the plastics industry, and the aerospace industry. This is a world built on oil. This is our world, we rule it, we control it. If you don't want to die with us, you have to listen to us. Saif's eyes were bloodshot as he shouted hysterically. Almost everyone in the hall was in such a state. Saif was not the most extreme among them. These people were well dressed in long robes and suit. They scurried around like headless cockroaches, spouting nonsense that they couldn't understand. Immense fear engulfed their souls. They had once stomped their feet. The world was also shaken by their influence. They had started the first and second oil crises, caused economic crises, and dealt a heavy blow to the world economy. They were once the elites who influenced the world, and countless people worked hard for their entire lives. Just to be their slaves and earn money for them, countless elites of the human race fought tooth and nail to have dinner with them. Their taste was fashion, their hobbies were trends. They excavated the dark wealth underground and sold it to the world at the price of gold, enjoying the most luxurious and unrestrained life. They didn't need to learn, they didn't need to work hard, they opened up new ideas, they were born to be noble. This seemed to be the axiom of the world. They were powerful, they were excellent, they drew a deep gap between themselves and ordinary people. But all of this ended in the hands of one person. He knocked nobility down to the mortal world and into the mud, making everything laughable. Saif looked at the old king in the video call and murmured, "Father, we are thinking of a solution. We have so many friends, someone will solve all of this. The world economy is closely related to us, no one dares to ignore this threat. Apocalypse is not a big deal, no matter how dangerous he is only one person." No. On the other side of the video call, the king looked at the video numbly and denied. "He is not only one person. Father, the world is on our side. Yesterday, the Secretary of State told me that the United States is our strong backing. Apocalypse is just a dog released by the United States, just like Osama Laden. Now that he has crossed the line, he is digging his own grave." Saif said agitatedly, "We don't even have to do anything, there will be a lot of people who want to kill him." The king looked at him with a strange expression that Saif had never seen before. It was a deep despair and helplessness that Saif had seen in the eyes of those lifeless refugees. It was a kind of numbness towards life. At this moment, he even suspected that the person in front of him was his father. "Saif." The king sighed. Saif made a respectful gesture of listening attentively. "Let us pray to God." Saif looked at his father in shock. He watched as the noble old man abandoned his luxurious carpet, abandoned his comfortable cushion, and knelt on the hard marble with his butt facing the sky. He heard his father chanting a prayer that was different from before. He softly prayed, "Yazrur, forgive us." Saif finally confirmed that his father had gone mad. This seemed to be a good thing. As the only one who discovered this among his hundreds of sons, he had a great chance to inherit his father's position. But Saif had long forgotten about this. He looked at the screen with trembling eyes. Beautiful orange-yellow pupils. If this was a beauty, Saif would marry that woman for this pure and holy gaze. After all, he could marry countless wives. The smell of blasphemy would make his blood boil. But now, he just wanted to kneel on the ground. Smooth curves, wide wings, and a strange creature covered in scales gracefully walked in from the entrance. The shocking sensation of death followed Saif like a shadow. It was the awe of the upper level of the food chain to the lower level, the nobility of wisdom to ignorance, the holiness of purity to the heterogeneous. There was only one word that could describe the creature in front of him: Angel of Death. "Yazrur, have mercy on us," Saif wailed. At the same time, Saif's father, the old man on the ground, turned into a ray of light and merged with the Angel of Death's halo. Every cell was as old as ice that had met hot water. It silently melted in the sunlight that was reflected by that creature. It was like nirvana. A smaller creature flew out from the light. It had a slender body, cold orange-yellow pupils, and a body shape full of murderous and death aura. The two creatures glanced at Saif on the other side of the screen, making him experience a nightmarish second. Then, they spread their wings and disappeared into the sky. Seeing the holy scene under the sun, Saif's heart was filled with confusion and fear. What just happened? What happened to the king? The deep fear made him lose all thoughts of resistance. He staggered forward, pushing away the people who tried to stop him. He muttered in a daze, trembling in fear. He curled up on the ground and let out an uncontrollable cry. "That's a mutant!" A voice entered his ears. Saif looked up. He saw an ordinary-looking boy standing in front of him, supporting him. The boy's body emitted the smell that Saif hated the most. It was the stench of a poor man. But the boy was confident, looking straight into his eyes without any fear. "Who allowed you to come in? This is private territory, get out," Saif said as if it was a conditioned reflex. He seemed to have angered the boy. He saw the white man stand up and use a tone that Saif didn't want to hear again in his life. He said to him, "Do you still think it's the past? Wake up. The apocalypse has destroyed everything you have. He has broken anything that you can be proud of. He has broken the backbone of your people. You can't stand and talk to me anymore. Oil is gone." When Saif heard the last sentence, his originally expressionless face and lifeless eyes suddenly exploded with anger and malice. "What did you say? What did you say? Ridiculous, ridiculous, what is oil? Do you know what it is? Do you know what Luther is? You're just a... Oil is destroyed." The young man interrupted Saif. 8% of the world's production, 5% of the world's reserves are destroyed. Oil is gone. The oil industry is finished. Your country, your people are finished. Nonsense. King bullshit. Saif's face was ferocious. He grabbed the man's collar and used all his strength to lift him up. The man's hand was like an iron hoop, firmly holding Saif's hand. He sneered. "Do you know about the apocalypse? Do you understand how terrifying he is? Maggots rotting in the dust dare to call themselves noble? You rotten maggots, let me tell you, the apocalypse destroyed you. He crushed your lifeline like a bug. We can deal with him, we can destroy him. He's just one person, what is he?" Saif struggled. "Idiot. Open your eyes and look. He's not a person, he's a disaster, the ultimate test for humanity, the apocalypse, the entire human race, the entire world is fighting against him, the entire American continent is trembling in his shadow. He's the enemy of the world, the destroyer, the apocalypse, the nightmare of our lives, the nightmare of civilization." The young man looked at Saif's eyes and sneered. "What can you do, little bug? Tremble in his shadow. Why did he do this? What is the mutants? What happened to oil?" Saif finally calmed down, at least he was willing to use his brain to think. "You're blocking the way, bugs. So, you were crushed to death, it's that simple. All power, strength, effort, wisdom, in front of that person, were as powerless as bugs, finally crushed into dust. As for the mutants, they are the bringers of the apocalypse, they bring a deadly famine. The famine of energy. They built nests on the oil, multiplied their mycelium, and extracted carbon and chemical energy. They evolved, survived, and multiplied. Then, like crushing eggs, they destroyed your country and the army sent by the United States and the oil tycoons. In just one day we saw that they turned from beasts to gods." All of this made Saif's mind filled with confusion. He didn't understand. He couldn't even understand what the young man said. Oil was destroyed. This news broke his spine. Without oil, without money, their country and people will be a nightmare, a deep nightmare. A deep fear engulfed his soul. Saif had never thought about the despair of a world without oil. Luxury and vanity would be destroyed in an instant. A country without oil, a country without an industrial system, a country without jobs, and a long history of luxurious living habits, their country and people would be more miserable than the current refugees. A desert without resources. In an instant it will become another terrifying poverty area, their wealth will become the fattest lambs in the mouth of several big countries, their fate will be more miserable than the lowly people of India. Thinking of this, Saif's heart has never been so calm. He can't care about others, but he can't fall into this situation. The education he had received allowed him to keep a clear head. Who are you? Tell me this, what's your purpose? Saif regained some of his elite look. He began to calmly consider his own interests. My name is Jean. I am here to find the people who support me to defeat the apocalypse. You have seen the last face of the king. You are also the most promising successor, the future king of the royal family. I need your support. Jean faded away, the naivety of an ordinary young man. He showed his ease and confidence in front of Saif. The frightened elites, politicians and Saif's people in the hall didn't know that the end has come. At least for them, their wealth, their power, everything they were proud of, everything was crushed into dust by a shadow. What awaited them was a nightmare, the nightmare of an entire nation. Jean looked at the elites who pretended to be noble before they died. He showed an extremely malicious smile. He thought happily, so what if you have wealth? So what if you have power? Don't know the future, don't know the general trend, you will be crushed and fall into hell. He looked maliciously at those people who used to be high and mighty, showing their confusion and fear. He imagined the despair on their faces when they heard the news. Deep in his memory, the voice of an old man, a child, a man, a woman, a saint, and a sinner appeared in his ears. No one is born noble, but we will be the king. Jean thought in a daze. This is the era of humans, the era where humans are the king. And the king must break his sword first. But we will be the king in the end. This is our era. Let the nobility and power of the past be destroyed in the flames of the future. To be continued. Chapter 113. A ball of fire was burning in Yuri's heart. The irrepressible anger made his rationality on the verge of collapse. He clenched his fists tightly and looked at the representatives of industry and commerce in suits and leather shoes in the conference hall. They were fiercely arguing and cursing about the impending collapse, and he listened to them making decisions that would make him fall into hell one after another. It was a ministerial meeting of the 12 countries in Washington to discuss the coordination of the world economy after the collapse of the world oil industry. Yuri knew that the United States, which had the most oil reserves, could only hold on for 90 days. After 90 days, the world economy would usher in an unprecedented collapse. This was a crisis of the shortage of raw materials for 80% of the world's consumer goods. It was a disaster that directly affected 50% of the world's economy. Anyone who knew the situation was desperate about the global economy. The most terrible economic crisis since the birth of the market economy was about to come. This would be a more terrible and intense collapse than the economic crisis before the Second World War. Yuri, who majored in economics, knew what kind of evil document these economic elites were discussing and arguing about. Capitalism had fallen from the cliff and wanted to find a scapegoat. This would only cause countless families to go bankrupt and countless people to lose their meager savings. The Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise Support Plan, the Antitrust Case Revocation Opinion, and the Emergency Currency Replacement Act cut off the adhesion of small and medium-sized enterprises to the national economy economically and legally. In the coming collapse, it protected the interests of the largest economies, supported trusts, and promoted economies of scale. This strengthened their ability to resist risks, but it also completely abandoned the interests of consumers and workers. This group of people wanted to use a new currency barrier to protect the largest enterprises at the upstream of the industry when the currency in the hands of consumers was dragged into a pile of waste paper by the Great Material Depression. After this, it would be the night of the world economy. It would be the end of the financial system, consumer system, and market economy. The Financial Protection Act would be the final blow. This meant that the state power would use its own body to cover the retreat of financial capital and protect the seeds of the future financial industry. The tide of bankruptcy and debt would make 80% of the world's population poor. Yuri had heard it. The members of parliament were discussing the proposal of a gold standard currency that was decoupled from the previous currency. After next weekend, it would be a Black Monday. The OPEC countries that had lost their value were now comparable to Black Africa. They hoped that they could sell their sand for money. Countries that rely on oil exports to create foreign exchange value will be the first to fall into despair, including Yuri's motherland. Then there were the big consumer countries. They would face a huge material shortage. With the shortage of consumer goods, the currency will depreciate indefinitely. Yuri calculated in his heart, and if the value of the USD can catch up to the dong in the future, it will be a blessing. Finally, there was the shortage of raw materials in large production countries. They will suffer a huge wave of unemployment and economic collapse. Fragile enterprises would all go bankrupt in the first wave of financial shock. It was estimated that 90% of the world's enterprises would not be able to withstand the first wave of shock. The remaining 10% of enterprises wouldn't be any better. This would be the complete collapse of the market economy. Yuri looked at the group of elites, who were sewing, filling, and patching the holes in this shabby basket despite the comprehensive advancement of science and technology, the highly developed alternative energy sources, and the production system in place. They were steering a sinking ship, trying to scoop water out and rebuild a ship that belonged to them with the raw materials on the ship. They were dealing with the passengers, trying to let everyone sink with them, completely ignoring the fact that a brand new ship was right next to them. They were protecting the ship that was destroyed by the apocalypse. Not only did they refuse to take a step forward, but they also joined hands and held each other's arms. They used political power, economic relations, and contracts to maintain the front line, and didn't let others pass. They stayed in this broken ship called market economy, using the lives of the whole world to protect the sanctity of asset. In this kind of life and death dispute, protecting assets and capitalism became the only principle that united them. The corporate system and the financial system would first make the world lose the hope of salvation. Only an iron fist and centralization of power can save Russia. This was the only thought left in Yuri's mind. His face was covered with tears, and his lower lip was bitten by him. Only nationalization, collective labor, and the Soviet system can save Russia. Only Lenin and Stalin can save Russia. Not these traitors. Not these capitalists. Brezhnev and Stalin, they can make the right choice. Make the choice to protect the people. Yuri touched his left chest. There was a medal of the former Soviet Union hidden in it. It was a level 2 patriotic war medal. This was the only thing left to him by his grandfather. That drunk old man did not forget to drag him to pledge loyalty to Stalin before he died. His father, a liberal, had cast a deep shadow on Yuri when he was young with his unrestrained and violent temper. Yuri, who was dragged by his hair and beaten, grew up bald. He hated his father, hated his red hair, and hated the dark times after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Yuri turned around and walked out of the venue. He keenly noticed that his anger had spread to the people in the venue. Some members of parliament were overwhelmed by the emotions that Yuri transmitted, and they started to beat up the dissidents. This was a very dangerous situation. The experienced security personnel here will soon notice that something is wrong. They will immediately suspect the psychic ability of a mutant. Yes, Yuri is also a mutant. The ability of telekinesis allows him to transmit his thoughts and emotions. He can even control others when his emotions fluctuate violently. Yuri has been hiding this for the first half of his life. Even the medical examination was deceived by him. If he is exposed as a mutant, although he won't be in too much trouble with his status, he will definitely be excluded from the center of power and banished to the edge. Yuri was hiding his political views. He hid his identity. After the detectors and weapons against the mutants were developed, his situation was getting more and more dangerous. Sure enough, in less than 10 seconds, Yuri heard the orderly footsteps of the clone army behind him. These combat squads had very powerful abilities after being modified. Coupled with specialized combat equipment, the mutants are no match for them. Yuri walked faster and faster. He skillfully drilled into the nearby complex tunnels, but the sound behind him did not lag behind. Damn it! It's a detection clone. Yuri knew very well that these clones with enhanced detection abilities were far from being able to be deceived by the simple concealment cloak he was wearing. Unfortunately, Wu can't give me the latest version, the biochemical cloak developed by the Far East. It's much better than our country's biochemical modified people. Yuri complained as he walked toward the place with greater energy interference. There are many small rooms in the conference room that are shielded from detection for the ambassadors to discuss. Yuri hoped to find such a room to get rid of the pursuers behind him. Seeing the black door in front of him, Yuri's face lit up with surprise. He quickly opened the door and went in sideways. He quickly retreated to the smoking room and covered his body with a curtain made of shielding fabric. When he opened the curtain, he was surprised to see the portraits of Stalin and Lenin on the wall behind the curtain. "Long live the Soviet Union," Yuri whispered. "Long live the Soviet Union." Behind him, such a voice came. Yuri threw the gun in his hand behind him. He hid behind the cabinet and carefully poked his head out to peep at the source of the voice. He saw a shadow sitting behind the desk, quietly looking at him. The person in the shadow was Chen Ong. He was holding a book and sitting there. His presence was extremely weak and easy to be ignored. He looked at Yuri with a gaze that made Yuri's scalp tingle. A ghost wandering in the sky of Europe. "Hello, comrade from the Soviet Union." "Chinese?" Yuri put away his gun and muttered in strange Chinese, "Hello, comrade." Yuri heard the orderly footsteps outside and was shocked. He was running out of time. He anxiously said to Chen Ong, "Please cover me, comrade from China. The running dogs of the imperialists want to persecute us." "Comrade from the Soviet Union, you are a mutant. Why are you afraid of them?" Chen Ong laughed. Yuri wasn't surprised that his identity was exposed. With the detection of the X gene becoming more and more advanced, it was only a matter of time before he was recognized. He said in a deep voice, "The clones have been implanted with the shielding gene. With the protection of the shielding gene, I can't affect them at all." Before he finished speaking, the clone soldiers wearing diamond helmets had already broken through the door. Chen Ong could clearly see that the diamond skin on their heads was similar to the White Queen's, blocking the power of mind control. Currently, other than the professor who had evolved his ability, there were no mutants with psionic abilities that could break through the defense. A hand patted on Yuri's shoulder. He turned around in shock and saw Chen Ong walking out from behind him. Looking at the approaching clone soldiers, Chen Ong looked at Yuri and asked, "Do you understand your ability?" "I don't think it's the time to talk about this. Comrade from China, quickly order them to leave." Yuri was shocked. Now, he only hoped that Chen Ong had enough authority to order the clones not to enter the room. Only a few countries participating in the 12 countries summit had such authority. Of course, China was definitely one of them. Chen Ong shook his head, indicating that he didn't have any authority. He smiled and said, "I don't have authority. But you do." Yuri was about to go crazy. He said in despair, "I don't have this authority. I hope my country won't think that I'm your spy." However, Chen Ong still looked at him and tapped his head. "Think about it carefully. What is authority? Then you will know whether you have it or not. The authority is directly implanted in their brains. They will verify it themselves. Where would I get the authority from?" Yuri looked at the approaching clones in despair. No matter how well the barrier of the mind is protected, it can't prevent communication. With communication, there will be influence. You have to discover this channel of communication and exert your influence. Understand your ability, then understand it, control it, and develop it. Everything exists relative to each other. There must be a solution to every problem, Chen Ong said calmly. Floating astronomy.